speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Boy, I do love that song. It's fantastic. Streams all day. Jacob was he did the stream right after the catastrophe that was PVK. Those streams are so useful for these. I don't know how they always get so synergistic, but yeah. So I was away last week. My friend flew me out to Reno, Nevada. I had not been to Reno, Nevada. He wanted me to attend his family's Orthodox baptism, which was great, and they let me participate up at the baptismal tub there and everything. I spent all day in an Orthodox church on Friday, like all day. It's like, where's Reno? All I see is this beautiful Orthodox church. So it was very nice. Yeah, it was amazing. That I got to do that, and then I get to see their first, taking communion on the following Sunday. You can't do that until you're baptized in the Ortho Church. So it was great. It was really nice. I got the bishop was there on Friday, so I got to get a blessing from the bishop of St. Anthony's Orthodox Church in Reno. I went out to Virginia City, which is one of the old mining towns, the Comstock silver mine, and I went to Lake Tahoe, which I hadn't seen. Lake Tahoe is really cool. It's the 5th biggest lake by volume, and it's the highest alpine lake in North America, and it's gorgeous. And it was 150 feet in California. So since then, I've just been washing myself because California all over me. I do have a cold. I have some kind of massive sore throat, and so I was up till 5 today in the morning, and then I went to sleep. And I have cough drops and stuff. So if you see me do cough drops or throat stuff, then you'll know what's going on there. But actually, I feel okay now. So we'll see. And of course, I've got my Sampel. I've got my my Muppet cup. Have you considered? You should. You should. And I didn't make any tea today because just too much. Just too much. So yeah, there will be a link later, Panda Person. I don't just let people come running in right away. Yeah, so the topic today, and I will start with my newsy like thing, which isn't really news, is about seeing the world, right? Filters and discernment, right? And this is really why your worldview matters, right? And with all the individualism we have, what does that mean for our worldview, for how we filter the world, for how we see things, for how we differentiate what's going on? And Paul Van der Klee's earlier stream today was a great example of people looking through individualism at the world and not being able to solve a very simple problem that everybody has solved a billion times before, and is extremely well documented. But you'd have to make some changes that you don't want to make. So that's a problem. And one of the observations we had this week, um, although it was a short week for me because, like I said, I flew out last Thursday. Friday was the baptism and the St. Anthony's feast day at St. Anthony's Orthodox Church. Which was weird because I had just run into the St. Anthony's concept, that prior week. So basically, one of the themes has been, what's everyone's problem with stories? And there's a site, I can't recommend that you visit it. It's called StoryGrid. It's horrible. Like these people are trying to reduce stories to a spreadsheet. It's like, explicitly, and I'm just terrified and horrified at the idea that you think you could reduce storytelling or good stories to a spreadsheet. And then you look at Hollywood and you go, oh, that's what's wrong. And these are disciples of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was an idiot, and almost all the things he said are just false. So I don't really understand when you hear him talk. Like, you just read the transcript for his Bill Moyers interviews; they're online. He's not very consistent. His logic is flawed, and all the things he's saying are wrong. I don't know what else to say. So one of the side effects of following, let's say, Joseph Campbell, was comic books, and that really destroyed storytelling in a very unique way. I don't think Alec is watching, but I already apologized to him once. He loves comic books. And the prime example is actually Superman. Superman's a great example of the destruction of storytelling and mixing up stories and myth or mythos. And the confusion around heroes, right? So a mythos does not involve a person, right? It's a story around a hero, usually, although it doesn't have to be. You don't need heroes to have a mythos. But it's usually the story around a hero. And that is not a human, right? And Superman, you can interpret Superman as closer to a man or closer to a god, effectively. And then, you have a planet of the gods, the planet gets destroyed, Superman is saved, raised by wolves. I mean, humans. What a horrible TV show that was. Good Lord. I actually was interested in it. I watched it. Joey made me watch it. But man, it was terrible. It's so weird. Superman relating to a human gives us something to relate to, right? But and some people understand it that way, which is very strange. But actually, Superman's just like an orphan god, and that's a mixture, right? And then he holds two individual separate identities. Right? He's anonymous, either as Superman or as Clark Kent. And like, this is not a way to be in the world for people. And so that comic book is bad storytelling, effectively. It's really bad storytelling. And the thing is that heroes is a third thing, right? Because Superman's not a hero. He's a god. And that's the problem. We've squeezed heroes out. Of course, you need heroes because they're an abstraction, effectively. All heroes in literature, as near as I can tell, and like, I haven't done an exhaustive survey or anything, but like, the best of my knowledge, they're all either born heroes, right? Or granted some property from the divine, usually the Greek gods or something, right? And that is what makes them heroes. Okay, what that means is there's no hero's journey for you, bucko. That ain't gonna happen. Can't happen. You don't need it, but like, it can't happen. So don't talk that way because it's not helpful, right? Heroes are supposed to be an amalgam. They're supposed to be, have some touch of the divine in them, right? Like, you could have a mythos just about the gods, for example, or just about the gods' interaction with people, right? Or heroic figures, right? Of course, Everyone goes to Lord of the Rings. Sure, fine, whatever. Who cares? Um, I mean, you have divine figures like Gandalf, right? Heroes are not good or bad ever in literature. I mean, some of them do the good and some of them do the bad. They're rarely perfect, although sometimes they are, right? And that's actually really important because when you're telling a story, what you're supposed to do is have a protagonist, pro, uh, and an and, right? And then you don't need a hero and an anti-hero because that doesn't make any sense and it's stupid. So don't do that. But that hero is that third thing that enables that vertical causality in the world. But the destruction of stories is super important because it's destroyed Hollywood, it's destroyed writing, it's destroyed all kinds of things completely. No one knows how to write a good story anymore because they can't do an ending because they don't have a rich enough world to find a way out, which means they're living in a flat world, basically. And part of this is the loss of the proper depth of hierarchy, right? And we have lots of psychological projection in the world. Man, do not talk about the salute that Elon Musk did because that'll just get you in trouble on Twitter. What a bunch of morons, though. Man, these people cannot logically argue anything. Um, and it's an insistence of ideas over action, right? Say, oh, this action must mean these ideas because the action is dictated by your idea. And it's like, no, your idea informed your action, but it kind of matters where all that came from and what it's aimed at, right? And there's a lot of lack of listening out there where people just are not hearing what you're saying at all, right? They're inserting new words, changing up words, doing different things with words, using words you've never thought of in your whole life to describe a position that you don't hold. Um, and it is all this psychological projection. And there's a lot of people out there just making claims like so and such salute is a fascism salute, right? Because the fascists own it. Because apparently, if you were the last person to put on clothes and you were a fascist, then everybody after you must be a fascist because they also put on clothes. That was the example I kept using. By the way, I didn't get one response to that example. So they don't have any evidence for their claims, right? And this is everywhere, right? It's endemic. And zero justifications for statements of belief. Why do you believe that the fascists can commandeer things that have been around for thousands of years? Why do you believe that they weren't all leftists when every piece of documentation that is available to you, which you haven't looked at, by the way, obviously, says otherwise? Why do you believe there's no justification? Zero. And that's the world we're living in. The world is made up of NPCs, right? And the thing that people don't realize is that the complaint about NPCs isn't that the world is made up about NPCs, it's that they don't listen to you. They're not following the things that you're following. Do you know that's what's happening? And this results in you trying to convince them to do what you are doing and not to follow, right? Because we've already squished the hierarchy. Right? But they want to, you want to increase your tribe size by having these other NPCs do the NPC things that you're doing, and you don't think they're NPC things because you know in your head you have perfect justification for whatever it is you're doing, even when you can't provide any evidence for your claims. Right. And it's super inefficient, right? It's not a rejection of NPCs. It's just a denigration of NPCs, even when you are one of the NPCs. And I've been over this before in my stream on mimicry. Check that one out; it's pretty good. That's part of the problem is that we very much have this problem with knowing that, like, yeah, everyone's an NPC about many things. But this brings us to how do you know a bad actor, right? Because even if you're an NPC, it doesn't mean you're a good one. Like you want to be an open-minded, winsome, open to all new ideas person whose mind can be changed. But can you do that? So let me give you a trick, but I hate calling it that. But people seem to see it that way. I call it reasoning backwards, right? So you take a conclusion, as in something that is already manifested in the world in the past, right? And then you ask a question about that, but change the context in a very specific way and only very slightly. So I used to do this with politics all the time to determine if somebody believed in the principles they espoused or not, right? So one way to do this, and I used to do this all the time, is I would take something that, say, George W. Bush did, right? And I would say, "Oh, do you remember the time that Bill Clinton did blah blah blah?" And I'm describing something George W. Bush did. And then you would see whether or not the attachment to the name made a difference in their attitude by correcting. So, oh no, that's right. That wasn't Obama that did that was George W. Bush. And almost all the time, people would change their mind about the thing based on who did it, right? So that just tells you something about their limitations, about how flat their world is, about what they can and can't handle, how many things they can track. And it's not whether or not they have principles. It's whether or not that even matters. Like if you have principles and you can't uphold them, I'm a pragmatist. I don't care. I can't determine those two things. And so I'm not going to try. I'm going to say, you're incapable of being principled. Are you a bad actor? I can determine that later. But at least I know the principles. The ability to be principled is not there. Reasons not relevant, right? And you do that with these little framing tricks where you just change one little detail. Tells you where people stand, right? Because they're anchored to something. Are they anchored to a name to rely on goodness? Oh, this person's good. Therefore, if they did it, it's good, right? Or are they focused on a principle? Oh, that's always a bad action. It doesn't matter who takes it, right? And obviously, it can't be that clear because actions rely on context, right? They rely on context. It's not always bad to kill somebody. Someone coming at your family with a knife, particularly your child, kill them. Kill them immediately. All right, don't worry about the rest of it. It's not bad in that case. So yeah, there's some nuance there. It's hard, but it can be done. And the problem is we do have to flatten the world to some extent. And flattening the world means uh, squeezing being out of the world, right? By denigrating the truth, the goodness, and the beauty. And that's what happens. You squish those things out and it creates a problem, right? And if you filter hierarchy from the world, you flatten it out to events in the material realm, right? Rather than keeping those events full of the breath of life, right? Hierarchy provides you the context. The so-called grand narrative is important. You always have one. You can just lie to yourself about it, but something's got to be at the top. Hierarchy is older than trees. It ain't going away, right? And rejecting of the hierarchy is the core problem, right? But not the only one, right? And it's a function of the loss of the poetic way of knowing. I talk about that in my knowledge engine model video. You can check that out on navigating patterns, right? And that leads to an intimacy crisis, right? Which manifests as a meaning crisis in men. And welcome to the Peterson sphere. We got a new tool up on the Peterson sphere, by the way. It's sort of in beta, but kind of cool. Um, Allows you to search a bunch of video transcripts, mostly for Vicky stuff, but we have some other stuff in there. But those are filters, right? Like, what stuff did you grab? Because you have to filter the world, especially freaking YouTube. I don't know if it's true, but at one point I read a figure that said every hour more video is uploaded to YouTube than you could watch for yourself in a lifetime. I think that's a little hyperbole there, but fascinating. Still a lot of stuff on YouTube. So it begs the question for us, how can we see the filters that people have, right? And first, we have to recognize that we are not all equal. We won't have the same filters, and some filters are not optional, right? People who know what they are talking about and are acting in good faith and are articulate, right, can and will answer basic questions about their positions, right? Their beliefs and the statements that they make, right? Their claims. They'll do that, right? Now, there's people who don't do that. And again, I'm a pragmatist, right? The reasons don't matter. They cannot act in good faith. Now, that may be deliberate, right? Or it may be an impossibility for them. Maybe they have blinders on. Maybe when they try to talk about the enchanted realm, they just don't see the enchanted realm. And so them trying to talk about the enchanted realm does nothing because they can't do it. It's very common, by the way. And look, it's okay if somebody can't act in good faith. You just need to know that. It's not like they can't ever act in good faith about anything, right? Although that's possible too. Those people exist. I don't know in what quantity, and I don't care, right? The possibility is enough. But I claim spotting this is pretty easy, actually, right? I mean, people get caught up in trying to engage with people in the most ecumenical way, right? Where they want to give them the quote benefit of the doubt, and but that 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 just obscures your view of what's actually happening in the moment, right? And so long as you don't want to save them or redeem or fix everyone, this isn't a big deal, right? You can just move on and say, all right, this person's not going to be able to act in good faith in this conversation. And you can go have a better conversation with somebody, right? Because you don't fit with that person for whatever reason. Maybe it's your fault, maybe it's their fault. It doesn't matter, right? Uh, you were never going to be able to fit with everybody anyway. So just move on, right? Like don't make a big deal out of it. Just go. That person and I are never going to see eye to eye. That's fine. Whatever. Move on. That person and I don't share principles. That's fine. Just move on. Right? And not being able to do this is a loss of perspective, right? Thinking you can fix all the problems one on one is really the same as the trick of socialism. See my video on navigating patterns, right? On the trick of socialism, right? It's a trick, right? It looks like you can fix all problems one on one because in your head, you can imagine how the other person will respond to you, right? But that other person's not in your head. And when you actually interact with them, things will not go as you imagined in most cases. And that's where the problem is. Like, we just think we have much more cognitive ability than we do. We think we can be, quote, empathetic. Well, I'm not a big fan of the idea of empathy unless it's a mother towards a child under the age of 5. Uh, I don't think in your pompous arrogance that you can hold my enough of my psychology or being or emotional state in your head and your own to be able to do this empathy trick that everyone keeps talking about. I don't think you can do that. Sorry, I don't believe you. I don't believe you know yourself well enough to do that for yourself, much less for you and another person at the same time. Not buying it. And that goes into the point. Do you know what possesses you? Because again, I don't think you know your emotional state that well, much less somebody else's. Right? So how you see the world is a function of what things possess you, whether they're ideas or principles or other people, right? What has a hold of you? What patterns are people following in the world? What patterns are you following? What movements formed you? Something formed you, right? Which sorts of things are you mimicking? I have a live stream on mimicry, right? Uh, this is a salient question indeed. Do you know? I mean, Jordan Peterson says you don't know what you're up to. Uh, certainly, you don't. And most people have no idea what they're doing, and that isn't bad, right? So long as you know what you're submitted to, right? And the real problem comes with the pompous arrogance of believing that you do know what you're doing, that you can see the results of your actions clearly, right? And that you know what's happening in the world as a result of you, or even as a result of other people. It's easy to look at Elon Musk and the H-1B visa thing, see my videos on both my personal channel, which is just my name, and Navigating Patterns, 'cause I just put that video out this week, about the H-1B visa thing and perspective. Like, Elon Musk doesn't understand H-1B visa the way I do. Thank goodness. I'm sorry I know so much about it, in fact. Um, so what he's saying isn't wrong from his perspective. It's not wrong at all, actually. They have a point. It's just that the outcome, which they haven't looked at, is not what they think it is. And they think they can fix that outcome when, in fact, the thing they think they're trying to fix is already stated in the bill. Oops. So that trick doesn't work. They don't know that, right? They're just following the pattern of business guys, and business guys, that's what they do. Again, watch those videos, watch both of them, actually. The one on my personal channel seems to have a 1,953 views, which kind of pisses me off because it's bigger than anything on Navigating Patterns. Urgh. I can only get so mad when I have a cold, though. That's part of the problem. I don't know if I have a cold or just, I think it's just the throat. Excuse me. I was not able to sleep last night very well, but I did get a nap this afternoon. So, and the real problem comes in with this idea that we know, like as such, like we know. Oh yeah, we know things. You don't. You don't. And when you think you know, you can't observe. You can't observe the world because there's no need to if you know. It's all in your head. And why look? Why pay any attention at all? Why not just take your feeling, project that onto the world, and say that's what happened? Because boy, did that happen a lot today to me. Right? Um, and one way to understand this is: are you upset that something is being pointed out? Right? Uh, or are you upset that someone's asking you a question? Maybe one that you can't answer. Does it upset you? Right? Possession confirmed. Possession confirmed. That's what you have to watch out for. If you're unable to articulate your point, maybe your point is wrong. That should be your first assumption, not your last assumption. It should be your first assumption. Right? If you keep switching targets, switching names, switching examples instead of resolving conflicts in your examples, in your names, in your targets, you're probably just confused. And this is a moment for you to recognize that. Or you can just blame the person you're talking to. I don't think that's useful though. So, what are you doing? And again, if you know what you're doing, you can't observe what you're doing. You can't observe how you're doing it, right? What did you want to be doing? Because drug addicts often want to quit and they can't, right? Like, but it's good to know that though, right? Because that's how you know if you need help. Like, oh, I intended not to do that again. I intended not to have another drink, and I did, right? I intended to avoid going out to places where there would be drinks, and I failed, right? And how's that like working out for you? How's the doing working? Are you just doing things on YouTube? Or did you fly to a baptism at an Orthodox church last weekend? Um, and have a lovely time. Did you reinvent some church movement online, like Paul Vanderklay claims has happened. I don't know why he had that stream. Is that a stream to call yourself out for doing bad stuff that wasn't going to work? I don't understand. Is that what you meant to do? I don't know, Paul. Is that what you meant to do? Um, were you honest about that conclusion, or did you just blame the person asking the question? Like, hey, what's the point here, guys? Right? Or is it like okay that well, we're not doing the whole movement, we're just doing like a slice of it? Like, oh, okay. So you can decide whether or not the slice is good and whether or not a slice is even possible and what slice is possible. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you just slice off a piece and of a movement and just implement that and it'll be fine? Is that what you can do? Should you? Should you do that? Are you the guy? You're probably not the guy. Are you the new media? Which is impossible, by the way. I know Elon Musk is running around saying this. I'm like, bro, if everyone's the media, then there is no media, right? You can't disperse it amongst all the people and leave it intact. That's right. But what is this distributed computing, decentralization? It's that like this is flattening the world. Like anybody says decentralization, they're flattening the world. But like by admission, like it's not that hard. Like, oh, I'm decentralized. Okay, so you're flattening the world. You're taking the things that go like this and you're making them go like this. Oh, fair. Like I get. Also, you're evil, so please don't do that. But whatever. Like I get it. I understand what you're doing. Some things need to be distributed and flat. I get that. Just that it creates all kinds of problems. Well-known problems in tech, by the way. Well known, right? And the thing is, it feels good to kind of take over the media, the institution, or convince yourself you're part of something that was that large, right? Like, I'm part of the media, and no, you're not. No, you're not. That didn't happen. Tearing something down doesn't mean you get to take it over, right? When it's torn down, it's gone. It's dead. It's over, right? Once you destroy the unity, you have only the parts. And thinking you can put those parts back together and probably better, which is why you tore it down in the first place, is hubris. And it's almost certainly wrong, right? The people who can put it together better, like Richard Branson does this in all his businesses, he writes about it. You can read his biographies. I did. He just builds alongside and builds better. He didn't tear anything down. He didn't need to. Things come crumbling down at his feet because he's better than they are. That's the correct strategy. That's a workable strategy. That's a working strategy. It is a sound and good strategy, and it keeps you out of trouble. So, what filters are we seeing the world through? The church, the seeker movement, the evangelical movement, and how does the medium affect this? Right, because text is more compressed than audio, which is more compressed than video. Hmm. All of this stuff matters. And you have different audiences for each. Yeah, I know someday I'll get the Substack. I've got the stupid Age of Gnosis article mostly written too. I just have to sit and edit it. Of course, cold is not helping. Could not write this morning at 3 and 4 and 5 a.m. when I was up. Listen to videos instead. It was lovely. Well, I wrote some code that didn't work. You see, there's a progression I've seen uh, as this pattern. The flattening was real, right? As a result of the internet, we'll say, and it's things are sort of reinflating now. That's the best, probably the best way to think about it. We went from zero talking to sort of text chatting online, right? To audio chatting online on the computers. And then we went into video. And then things get taken away, right? Because video is mostly a one-way medium. And we got TED Talks, which is one person barfing their idea at you over the screen. Now, if you look, I did a quick survey of this. I could have written some software and done the crawl and all this. But if you do a quick survey of the TED Talks, you're going to find Jordan Peterson does very well in TED Talks. He's in the top 1%, like everything else the guy does. I don't know why. He's a magical creature. Um, I, I don't know why, but his ideas really resonate compared to other people's ideas. Now, there are some videos that have like 10 million views, but they're all of a certain type. At least when I did my quick survey, wasn't that quick. I mean, I spent at least an hour on it. I just didn't do a formal, rigorous spreadsheet and complete data analysis, which I have all the books to tell you how to do. But I actually know how to do it now because I read all the books and did all the work in the books, which is super important, not reading them, but actually I prefer tech books because they usually give you exercises so you can implement stuff. Um, but then we went to sort of two-person conversations, right? And then we went from that to sort of long form chat to multiple people. And all of this is sort of a re-enchantment, right? But it's pretty much on the vertical, right? And what is the future of this? Well, if I ever win the lottery or heck, get any kind of income at all, I do have a plan. I want to open a tea shop and have audience participation interaction like they did at the Peterson talk that I attended years ago, 5.5 years ago now, in Charlotte, North Carolina, when he was out here. They had a way to involve the whole audience. I thought it was pretty clever. I thought it was good for the audience, or it could be, right? I made some enhancements to it, at least ostensibly. So someday when I raise $1 billion, or actually it's not that much money. I think I probably said like 350 grand. I would do that. I would definitely do that here in somewhere in Columbia, probably South Carolina. But you can see these little progressions, right? You can see these filters. And no panda person, I do not think that Marshall McLuhan is correct, at least not in his statement. Now, whether or not he has a point about the medium as the message is different. I mean, the medium's clearly not the message, right? Like basic advertising 101 says no. Bernays says no. I don't know where this idea comes from. I don't know what he's trying to convey. He might be misnaming something, and so his point may be perfectly correct. I have no idea. I'm probably not going to read Marshall McLuhan. I just don't have the time for crazy Canadians. And why would you say that, right? Like, what lens is he stuck in, right? And I think, what lens are we all stuck in? Well, we're stuck in the age of gnosis, right? Knowledge is the highest value expressed as propositions, right? Perfectly transportable from any individual to any other individual in a flat world because context doesn't matter. And that is the materialist view of knowledge, right? So if you want to take knowledge, which is an abstraction, and you want it to materialize it, that's propositions. It's words, it's writing, right? That's what it is. And that's a flat world, right? That's a materialist world. You've taken knowledge, which we'll say is not perfectly transportable, right? Because not everybody can learn the same things. I don't know why this would be. Like, I don't know why people use this. I'm like, obviously, you all can't learn to program, right? You're not going to learn 8 programming languages like I did. Like, it's not going to happen. So maybe one of you can. It's possible, right? But it's not transportable to everybody. It's not. I'm sorry. That's why we have terrible software everywhere, and it just breaks my heart. Whole industry destroyed. Beautiful industry, completely destroyed. But it's flat now, right? It can be measured, analyzed, algorithmed, right? But more information won't help. I'll get to that video, I promise, at some point. I'm still trying to find good examples. You've created information about information, right? And it's become a parasite. Information is referencing itself. It's self-referencing. It's parasitical, right? And this is well known in computers. We call it metadata, right? In the computer field, we call it metadata. It's data about data. Right? And metadata, I mean, it's still all the rage, right? That's what you want. That's what gives you your marketing information, right? You want to know how many times I visited Amazon and what I looked at and whether or not I bought it, right? Or bought a similar item, which items I went to after looking at that item, because then you can do that for somebody else that looks at those items because now they're quote related, right? The relationships of objects in a computer space are being derived from metadata. That's how they're derived technically, right? In the field. That's technically how it is done. Excuse me. But that's not useful, right? It's just more information, and more information won't help. Not that more information doesn't help anything, right? But I'll get to that. Now, if knowledge, which by the way is not what people are describing when they're using the word knowledge, I go over that in the knowledge engine model video on navigating patterns. Check that out, right? Is propositions, then all information is flat, right? So if knowledge is propositions, all information is flat. But we know that better information helps, right? And the way you get information is it's signals that are put in a formation. That's why it's called information, for real. Like, it's not that hard. I don't know why people get caught up with this, but actually it's super easy. What signals are you exposing yourself to, right? That's a good question, right? Because just exposure alone is going to be a good part of the battle, right? And then what's forming those signals for you, right? So you can encounter something and feel afraid. That may be the result of a previous formation, right? But you have some control over that. Maybe not as much as you want, maybe not as much as you need. Maybe you can't escape it. That happens, right? People usually refer to that as trauma. Fair enough. That definition of trauma I can get behind, right? Where your emotions are overwhelming your free will. Yeah, that would be a trauma. Okay, I can deal with that definition. Most people don't use that definition. I don't know what the hell definition they are using. They usually don't tell you. That's a red flag. But you need to know what's forming those signals because it could be the trauma. This is that whole positive attitude thing. I mean, it works, right? It's just not perfect. Everybody wants a perfect answer. You're not going to get that. But if knowledge is so highly valued and you have it, right, then the side effect from this age of gnosis way of thinking, which is a filter we all have, unfortunately, we can't get around it. We were kind of born into this age of gnosis, right? Some people use the term modernity, bad term. Bad term. You can look it up. I got my video on it. I make the case there. I'm not going to make it again here. You can watch that video on navigating patterns, right? This age of gnosis thing that you're born into, now you've got knowledge. It's highly valued, right? And if somebody push back on what you know, right? Like, oh, I know that's a Nazi salute. I'm sure of it, right? Then that's violence. I mean, and technically, it would be, right? And that's how words become violence. That's how it happened. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. That's exactly how it happened. Right? But when that's the case, you cannot learn. If you think words are violence, you can't learn. You're not going to learn anything. Probably ever again, right? The bubble is inevitable, right? And all because you don't know what better is. You still don't know what better is. Right? Better information, better signals, better context. This is all important, right? It's all unknown to you because you can't do it all yourself, right? But you think you can. You think like, oh, I can do it all myself, but it's clearly impossible. You can't even do most of it yourself. You can't even do half of it yourself. You can't even do a little bit of it yourself because you're a Muppet. It's okay. You're a Muppet. I'm a Muppet. We're all Muppets. It's fine. We all have our limitations. We all have our filters. We all have our traumas. We all have our problems. Who cares? It's not that important. I mean, it's important that you know that about yourself so that you can be open to learning, because otherwise you're going to stay stuck, man. You don't want to be stuck. You don't want to be stuck in the meaning crisis. You'll get stuck in nihilism. It takes a while. I mean, you may die before you hit the nihilism. I get that. Also, why are we having that conversation? That's dumb. You could live a happy life instead. And the thing is, stupid people can't discern that they're stupid, right? And you can't point it out to them at all. It's not possible. And we're all stupid about something. Actually, lots of things, but try to be nice. But it's not possible to point it out to them, right? Like, how many times do I have to explain to people there is no way that you ever received information in any way, shape, or form that was authoritative, that every fascist wasn't first a lefty socialist scumbag? Because that didn't happen. There are no examples. None. They're all lefties, every single one of them. And you can't convince them of that. You can't. I tried. I used all my Twitter power. Uh, it's not the medium, right? It's not. I've had that conversation in person with people many times over the decades. This is not an unusual conversation for me, right? So you've got to kind of know that. And that's why submission is important, right? And yeah, betrayal's a constant for sure, right? But there is no other option, much less no better option, right? So what are you doing, right? Trust, submit, and persevere. That's why Stoicism is so popular, anyhow, because it tells you to trust, submit, and persevere. Don't try to change the world, just deal with it. Yeah, I think I get it now. That's why it's so popular. This isn't that hard. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about what you attend to matters. The world's attention. Jonathan Peugeot told me so. He must be right because he's French Canadian and they're God's chosen people. I know because I'm one of them. So there you go. Can confirm. So what is it that you're aiming at? Or is something aiming you instead? Are you sure? How autonomous are you? And the thing is, you must use your free will, limited though it may be, because this is where everybody gets wrapped up. They want perfect free will or something. I don't know what that would mean, but it seems to be what they're aiming at, right? But you must use your free will imperfectly to place the most attention on the most salient facts, on the most important information, and not let a flood of facts or information or emotion override the important signals that tell you the most stuff or the most important stuff about the world. But you cannot know anything about the world by implementation or manifestation alone. Meaning requires context plus content. See my meaning of words video on navigating patterns, right? Did you get a context or did you provide your own? Do you know? Are you sure? This is tricky indeed. What is a Nazi salute? Is it wrapped up in intent or is it something people do all the time because it's been memed on the internet? You know how many times I tell people on Twitter, guys, you're being memed. Like, no, you right now are being memed by everybody else on the internet. Because this salute you think is so important has been done by all your little lefty buddies that you love. And by a ton of other people. Taylor Swift. Like, what are you talking about? You're a lunatic. And they don't know they're lunatics. No one pushes back on them. It's very sad because they can't get better. If you don't push back on people, they cannot ever get better. That's what you're dooming people to when you enable them, when you do this winsome bullshit. You're screwing them for life. You're completely ruining their lives. And you shouldn't let people do that to you either. People aren't pushing back on you. Get the hell away from them. Oh my God. Not everybody, right? Maybe your mom, right? whatever. But man, you gotta have people push back. Otherwise, you don't know where you stand. And if you don't know where you stand, someone's standing you somewhere that you don't know about. That's what's happening there. Observation, baby. Observation. Don't think you know where you are and what your actions are doing. Go look. Importance is what this is all about. This is a function of vertical causality. It's a function of the up and down of the world. One of Paul Vanderklay's better work is Eyes Up, Eyes Down. I love that video. I got to find his, I think he's got 3 videos that I know of on that topic. I haven't watched any of his stuff in like 2 years, but his old stuff, some of it's very good. It's all way too long. I've told Paul about this several times. I hope he fixes it someday. 20-minute video on Eyes Up, Eyes Down. Total power. Total awesome. I don't think he'll do it, but squirrel brain. He says he's got squirrel brain, and then he'll do a 40-minute video on the same topic. It's like, if you had real squirrel brain, you could fit into 15. The vertical causality is what holds the frame, but also doesn't move. It allows the contrast with the world that does move, because we live in time or entropy or both or something. I don't know. Still can't figure out the difference between time and entropy. There is a difference. I know that. I just can't figure that line out. I don't think it's important, but I like to let you know. Like, I don't know that. I have no idea. I can't figure it out. Lots of things I can't figure out. It doesn't bother me. And we fool ourselves with picking, relative or arbitrary, because those are the same thing. Oh, I can make them work logically. It's still arbitrary. Logic is arbitrary. Sorry. Uh, we fool ourselves, right, with this relativity, right? We put the importance on the horizontal, which is a flat plane, right? And we confuse that with the highest on the vertical. But when you add the vertical, it's not adding one more linear, discrete set of variables to deal with. That's not what's happening, right? The quality of the relationship emerges, right? That continuous movement emerges, right? The idea of proper relationship is all there in the vertical. That's why hierarchy is older than trees. One moment. That was the hierarchy of my illness interfering with my monologue. Not my monocle. That's different. And this is super important to consider, right? Like, are you in this flat world? What are you doing in the flat world? Is that why everything you're doing is not working out, or some number of important things you're doing aren't working out because you're in a flat world and you just don't see the things you're missing? Probably. Panda, I'll get back to you on that. I'll demonstrate it. I always struggle with this, but actually tonight, for some reason, even though I'm sick, I think I can do it. There are tricks to show why logic isn't the thing. So this goes back to what is important: the fact that an action was taken, or the result of the action. Someone did a salute. Was that what was important? Or was it the result? Or was it their aim? Right? Was it the symbolic representation of the salute as interpreted by you? Or the symbolic representation it had throughout history? Oh, yeah. Symbolism does not solve this problem, by the way, at all. It does make it worse, though. So that's good to know. And these are not easy to spot at all, because evil can override our senses pretty easily. All it has to do is get us upset, right? It just, any emotion you invoke, bang, overrides your senses. It overrides your observation immediately. Right? People can't see when they're upset, or at least they can't see clearly, right? They're over fixated on something, right? And details matter, but some matter more than others. That's the trick. And look, again, it's not easy. I know, right? But then we weren't given easy world. Then again, it actually is easy, right? You're just paying attention to and spending your cognitive energy on the wrong things, right? If you think and reason and rationality are going to resolve this for you, you're wrong. And if you've wasted your time being really good at those things, then I'm sorry. But you've been screwed for sure. Because is not going to resolve it, right? You're going to logic your way through the um, symbols and the vertical causality using propositions and get everybody to agree. That's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. Wrong set of skills. And the thing is, knowing where you fit, we'll say in the world, in the systems that you're embedded in, um, what you can't fit into, right? That's important, right? And it's more important if you feel you can't fit in. Right? Like, oh, there's no way for me to fit into this system. I can't go to work because they make me do these things a certain way, right? But it's likely that you can fit in, right? If you change, right? But you have to ask yourself the question, what are you willing to give up that you have now to get what you want later? Right? This is especially salient to me because I see these people, they're like, oh, I can't afford a house. And I'm like, no, you can definitely afford a house. That's not a problem. I went from homeless and making, minimum wage to buying a house. Like it can be done. I've done it. So every time somebody says that, I'm like, I just want to beat you, like repeatedly, until you get over yourself, because you can definitely do that. The problem is you won't make the sacrifice to do that. Well, you're crying about a problem you created for yourself. Sorry, it's the fact. And how you get a sense of domicile, we'll say, is a mystery, maybe, right? Uh, but knowing where you fit in may not be something you can do for or by yourself, right? That's always possible. Instead, you likely need more than one authority, somebody outside of yourself, and preferably above you, who can tell you because you can't see yourself clearly. You can't. This idea that we can step outside our constraint, right? Which is by definition impossible, by the way. Just somebody screwing with the language to convince you of something that can't be true. Uh, and maybe the other term is like we can think outside the box, right? This is nonsense. We can't make the world that we want by ourselves, right? That is always the trick. But we can make the world that we want if we find a way to cooperate with others. Now, will it be exactly the way we personally want it? No. But when you cooperate with others, the world that you wanted is often improved upon by them. And sometimes you have to give up something that you feel is an improvement to get it. But look, man, world's full of trade offs. I got a video on that, of course, too. And that's why I don't like opponent processing. I like cooperative processing. You see what the difference would be? Opponent processing is you by yourself and you against the world. I mean, you can do that if you want. I think you're an idiot, but like I can't stop you. Unfortunately, if I could, I would, right? But I'm not even going to bother. So you can go off and argue with somebody else. That's fine, right? This is why cooperative processing is important, and it's important to have that frame because that determines everything. Now, remember, to oppose means to set against. That's something you do to the world. It's not a feature of the world. The world does not oppose you. That didn't happen. So all this is to say that filters and the concepts matter. What are your limitations? Do you know? Should you maybe have others advise you as to what they see your limitations as being? And maybe they won't be right about all of them. That's fine too. We're not living in a perfect world yet. And you're not a perfect person, and they're not a perfect person. And that seems important. I wish somebody had written that down in a book a couple thousand. Nah, no one would have read it anyway. Anybody who did read it probably would have misinterpreted it. And even if they read it, interpreted it correctly, they wouldn't follow it anyway. So waste of time to write it down. Waste of time. All learning is revealed. All of it. You don't learn. You open yourself up. You open a space in yourself for change, and it comes from the outside. Right? Did you do that? Are you sure? What did you last learn, and from whom, or from where? Right? From what kind of an experience? Right? And what action was involved? Because reading is not an action. Just letting you know, right? Just FYI. Right? A lot of people say, "Oh, I read this great book." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's awesome. What was it about?" And they can't tell me. And I'm like, okay, fair. I mean, there's books I can't tell you what they're about. Like, I get it. Also, are you sure you learned anything? If you can't recapitulate it, how well did you learn it? Because learning ultimately is being open to new things and being willing to sacrifice something you have now for something better, usually later, sometimes in the moment, right? So you need to know that. That's how you determine if you're actually learning or if not. And what about asymmetry? Because we live in an asymmetrical world. Now, this is a factor, and it provides contrast to no vertical causality, good and bad, right? It's hard, however, because more doesn't mean good or bad. However, generally there is more bad than good, right? Bad is generally easier. That's why there's more of it, right? Um, but that's the paucity of measurement. Measurement can't actually tell you good from bad, right? You need a lot more information, a lot more. And it always has some importance, right? Like, can't do away with measurement. That's not going to happen, right? But it doesn't always have primacy. Sometimes it has primacy, right? Depends what you're talking about, but it doesn't always have primacy, right? It points to things like scale, but not perfectly, right? More does not mean you've changed scales. That's not what it means. It usually means that, sure. It can mean that in certain things. There's certain things where more doesn't scale at all, right? And usually bigger is more badness or more potential, right? Or more potential for badness, right? But not always. It's a tricky thing. And I think the internet's the perfect example of this, right? More information, that's a flood. Flood is a chaos. I don't know. I mean, the chaos continues and it increases. And I know we're all excited. I'm excited too that Trump is in office and that things are going to change. Now that can go either way. You say like, well, Trump's, now it's going to be revealed how the Nazi-ist he is with his Nazi friend Elon Musk. Aha! They'll all get their comeuppance because some people are talking like that on the internet. By the way, uh, obviously I'm not on that side because those people are retarded. But um, try to tell them that retarded people don't know they're retarded. Um, Either way, though, like you're gonna get your answer. Accelerationism for the win, I guess. I don't know. Not a fan, but but I get it, right? But actually, it's just an increase in chaos because the political system is the projection at the end of everything, right? Politics downstream of culture. That was Breitbart, I believe, if Jacob's not mistaken. He was the last one that reminded me of that. Um, it's a tricky thing because there's a lot going on. And when you're in that flat politics world, you think, aha, right? Or you're in that flat church world, you think, aha, we know how church movements work. And we don't. And therefore, right, whatever. That's not how it works. And, and this leads me to the fact that some things are not transportable, right? You can't apply a business model to a church or a political system, right? Or you can't apply capitalism to the family like that. These are ridiculous things, right? But some things are universally transportable, right? So let me give you a few examples. Being at home raising a child is not a transportable thing, right? That means someone else cannot do it for you. You cannot transport the responsibility of raising your child to someone else, which means you cannot pay somebody else to do it as well as you can, ever, right? It's not possible. Now, You can and should augment watching your child, right? Augment the responsibility of raising your child to your extended family, right? If at all possible. And if it's not, make it possible, right? But that isn't the same. It's not a full time thing, right? It's an augmentation, it's an addition, it's a level of depth and quality that doesn't exist if you raise your kid alone by yourself, right? Um, but raising your kid alone by yourself is not the same as having a nanny raising your kid, right? It's not transportable. Other things are transportable, like a salute, right? It doesn't carry the same weight. It doesn't carry the same care, the same thoughts, because the aim is abstract. What are you saluting? Why are you saluting that thing? What is the context that would give you that information? Because it's all about context. I mean, that's the meme. That's why everyone's memeing everyone doing the Nazi salute all over the place, or the Bellamy salute, or the Roman salute, however you want to call it. It doesn't really matter at this point, right? It's a very old salute. Of course, it's as old as Rome. If you think it's not as old as Rome, you're just dumb. At some point, you're just stupid. You think it only got invented recently? How many human movements are there? Come on, like, be a little realistic about time and time frame in history. And that's the thing. You can salute a flag or a person or an ideal. Right? It's the aim of the salute that matters, not the salute itself. A good hierarchy knows and can tell you and can help you understand what to transport and what to keep local. In other words, what belongs where in the hierarchy. The thing everyone's struggling with is they want to be higher in a hierarchy than they can handle, right? And that just destroys the world. And if you try to convince people that this is a bad idea, uh, they get upset. And what they're doing is trying to convince you that we're all equal so that they secretly, unconsciously, maybe subconsciously, can be at the top of the hierarchy because they think they belong there. There's no submission, right? And this idea of an institution or hierarchy allows for this through vertical causality. That's the feature that allows us. One moment, please. Oh, this is awful. So the question to ask yourself is, do you see what people do? Or do you see what people aim at? You see why they are doing it? Do you know why people are doing what they're doing? Or do you just think you do? Because that's really the key, right? Can you ever know the motivations of another person? Are you sure that you can do that? And I think this one's backwards, right? I infer their intention from their action. And it works really well. Of course, we have to wait for their action, but small price to pay. Um, and remember that everyone else, including you, does things and will do things having a firm belief that they know that those actions will have a particular outcome, right? They know exactly what they'll produce. And is that what you produced? Is that the outcome that you thought? Only humility can open you up to the learning that you were wrong. And all learning is really just having the capacity to believe that you were wrong and looking for it. And you don't see yourself perfectly. So you need other people to tell you, right? And look, this isn't perfect, but still it's the best answer, right? And so some things to consider just real quickly. In a flood, what is widespread? What kind of flood is it? What is happening in a flood? What's going on? Chaos? Can you tell, or do you just see patterns and believe that they're long lasting, real patterns that are part of reality? Do you have discernment? Or does a flood mean precisely that your discernment goes down? Maybe you have more information, and maybe that just obscures everything. When anonymous agents exist, are they relevant? Like, if you don't know who the person is that relevant? You can't connect who's doing what? Should they be? Should those anonymous agents be relevant? Can you link their anonymous work with their other work? If not, you're missing context. Do you know what they're up to? Can you know what they're up to? I assure you, you cannot. You have to know how you see the world. You have to know what filters you're operating under and at least try to discern what filters other people are operating under. And you have to have discernment because you're going to judge whether you want to or not. Because you have to judge, take an action in the world. You can see my videos on navigating patterns, my live streams on discernment, then judgment, then action, 3 weeks in a row. Wonderful monologues. And that, my friends, is the end of my rant. This is more of a rant than a monologue. Part of that is just a cold, I think. Let me go through some comments and then we'll post up a link. I do appreciate all of the activity in the comments. I already said good evening to Sandy. I said something to Dawn. Take him, tell everybody to get over here. That was nice of him. Sleep to the stream. Don't sleep to my stream. Let's see what we got here. Wait, no tea? Yeah, I know, Anselm. Well, look, when you've got a cold, can't do everything. I can't taste much anyway, mostly because I've been downing cough drops like they're going out of style all day. So, and then I got some Cepacol or this isn't called Cepacol, but it's the same thing. Numbing agent in your mouth. I'm Kirk, and I heard on Jacob's channel you called me, but I call everybody a Muppet. That's because you're a Muppet. Um, I don't know, Don. Is that a joke? I ain't laughing. Dixon on the PVK stream was a bunch of flat worlders looking at other flat worlders instead of up. I'm so glad you noticed these things. Yeah, it really was. It was a fascinating study in flat world. I mean, it's exactly what I'm talking. I'm like, how does this happen? I already picked this topic, and then they just exemplify it a few hours before my stream. I'm like, well, there you go. The superhero comics do strike me as bad mythos, probably Protestant. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the Protestant catastrophe, as I like to call it, did a lot of things, right? And it's not necessarily quote the Protestantism that did them, but also, yeah, a lot of badness there. The printing press has not been our friend. Just because you can publish a quote book, even that's not a book, doesn't mean you should. And that's just because you think you can tell a story or write a screenplay doesn't mean you should, right? This is the thing that Hollywood's struggling through right now. All right, what else we got? Young God, a flat world when one woman can be a one-man army. That's clever. I like that. I like that. I mean, the Hitler mustache is a fine mustache. So sad it's taboo now. Oh well. Okay, young God. Why are you like this, dude? Excellent. People think a symbol can only have one meaning. Yeah, a symbol by definition can't only have one meaning. It's very amusing to me, right? Like symbol is the multi-connectedness of the world. It's the quality. It's the thing that gets you out of the linear discrete thinking. See the model, the knowledge engine model video. Panda person, you're like the inverse of Chezi, Mark. I don't know what that means, but I hope not. Under agreeableness. Under agreeableness. Why do you identify against? That might be a problem. Um, it's a fractal one. No, that's not how fractality works. You're stating facts. Okay. Under agreeableness is not a sensical statement. Do I agree with the dictum by Marshall McLuhan that medium's message? No. But I don't know what he means by that, so I don't want to throw out his work and say Marshall McLuhan is wrong. The medium cannot be the message, obviously, right? Like I could send this as a podcast, an audio only medium does not change the message at all in that case. So automatically wrong. Took 2 seconds, right? I could write this out in an article and get the same point across. Now, I may need to change some of the words, or I may want to change some of the words for the written piece, but that does not change the message at all, right? Like medium is delivery. That's all it is. It doesn't have to change the message. Now, it might limit the message. This is where I think people get confused. Like, yes, the medium limits the message, right? If I have text only, I can't convey things like sarcasm as well. It's still possible, we'll say, but it's really hard. Sally Joe, the medium is not the message. Yeah, I mean, any artist knows this, right? In fact, in art school, right, you're required to give the same message with different techniques using different mediums. This is well known. So I don't know where he gets it from. I don't know what he's on about. So I don't want to say he's wrong. He might just be mislabeling it. If the line is drawn in the sand, the message is not impression in dirt. Yeah, well. John, a statement made no sense to me until it was illustrated to me in terms of the Kennedy-Nixon debate. Then I understood that the statement is still not well worded. Yeah. Well, the fact that communication methods advance with technology is no surprise. The destruction of the world began with the printing press. No surprise, right? Like even Vervaeke goes into that in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which is misnamed and should be called Awakening to the Meaning Crisis. Awakening from the Meaning Crisis is closer to his meditation series, which I guess is back on his channel now. The medium refracts the message. Thanks, optics. That's true, young God. That's a better way of saying it. What else do we have? Adam, thankfully, I'm listening here. I have much better view of Mark L, which was hardly likable to me when limited by a keyboard and a few words out, or filtered through other people. So one thing that happened was not this last live stream, but the previous live stream that PBK did. A bunch of people said, "Oh my goodness, you're much nicer," and I said, "I am exactly 0% nicer than I was the live stream before that." The difference is who was around and who was saying what, who was shaping what I was saying for the audience. Right. When I'm unfiltered, or more likely when you submit to actually listening to me because it's me and it's not somebody else's show, you just hear me more clearly. And that can be very useful because like I got accused today of doing theology again. And I said, give me an example of theology. Right. And of course, there wasn't one because I don't do theology ever because I'm not qualified and I wouldn't dare dream. And I don't know any of the lingo, or the jargon. So I couldn't if I wanted to. Right. And so that went away. But when somebody says that, you put your filter on too, right? Like you're like, aha, he's doing theology. Well, all those idiots want to do theology all day long. They think it's a solution to the world. They're of course wrong about that. It's ridiculous. None of them are qualified to do any theology. They all suck at it. And even I know that, that must mean you really suck. So yeah, you just got to watch out what you've been shaped by, really. What's formed your ideas. That's part of the problem. Panda person. Free will, I have no idea what that symbol means. That is not a symbol we use in computer math anyway. I imagine you just mean does not equal to the ability to with that. Oh, I see what you did. All right, that makes more sense. The ability to, without any emotional consequence, do anything at any time anyway. Look, when you use the word free, you have to have it in relation to something. And that's going to become important, right? Like free doesn't exist in objective material reality, which doesn't exist by itself. right? Free is not like free from consequence and constraint, which is what most people are describing when they use freedom. They're saying, I'm free from consequence and constraint. Usually they'll back off on that because they realize censorship has to happen or something, right? Um, excellent. I prefer to say people have agency rather than free will. Probably a better word. That is true. Winsome equals lose more. Yes. Well, that's certainly true. Adam, I reinforce states of being into body postures with a dictionary. So when I have an involuntary posture, I can read what my mind is thinking. Maybe. Why do you think logic is arbitrary? No, it's not why I think logic is arbitrary. Logic is arbitrary. It's a process. Okay. Open-ended tools of process can produce anything. Logic is an open-ended tool of process. Right? Your starting point with logic, reason, rationality determines your ending point in all cases. Right? The one thing we're not paying attention to, especially in a flat world, because it's middle out thinking, is starting point. And this is the trick the postmoderns play on everybody. Why people fall for it, I couldn't tell you. I also want to shoot all of them because they're being dumb, really stupid, like really obviously stupid. I used to play this game. I talked about this. I think it was the first time I talked to Vanderclay, which would have been like 4 years ago now, probably 3 or 4 years ago. I have a couple conversations, and then I've jumped on his live stream a bunch of times. I'm on a lot of his early live streams. Um, I was explaining to Pastor Paul that there was a game that we used to play back in the day when I was young around trolling, and I got very good at the game of trolling, which is not similar to, but not the same as what we do now, because it was a game. It was fun. We had a scoring system, right? You can go to that video and see more. But I had another game, and my game was I can prove anything with logic, reason, rationality. Now, everyone used to jump to prove the Holocaust was right, and I would say, listen, you don't want to do that. Hitler already did it. I can do it a different way if you want, but you don't want to play that. I mean, that one's already been played. Like, usually they'd insist. I would always win that because it's easy to win. Because the science of eugenics is not scientifically incorrect. It is actually scientifically correct. It is morally and ethically incorrect. And it relies on certain assumptions about the world, by the way, that are indeterminable, right? In other words, the fact that there may be or the fact that there is a logical conclusion to evolution that says there is a perfect state of human being, according to evolutionary theory, which is technically true, by the way, does not mean that you know what it is, and therefore you cannot derive it, and therefore you should not pursue it because technically that's impossible, right? Like you wouldn't know what that was. However, if you ignore that, and most people do because we psychologically project, eugenics is perfectly correct. You should definitely do that. and to some extent, this is the bad part, right? Like you're already doing that. Like mates, that's what mate selection is. Right? It's your personal preference for what perfect humans look like. That's what mate selection is, technically, in science. Sorry. Right? And so that makes logic arbitrary. Now, if you change the parameters of the system, as I showed, right? You say, oh, no. You can't apply logic to get an end result when you can't know the end result of the system. Well, then eugenics makes no sense, and you can't derive it logically from Darwin's theories, right? But you can if you ignore that constraint, right? That's why logic's arbitrary, because it's dependent upon the constraints that are given. Entirely. It's entirely dependent upon constraints and starting point. And that will always lead you to an ending point. Always. So if you work it backwards, and I'm highly dyslexic, so I just do this. If you work it backwards, You can get any number of starting points that will give you the ending point that you want, and you can logically argue anyone into any position. I've done it many, many times over the decades. Many, many times. It's wicked easy to do. Um, it, I, you do have to effectively put someone in a situation where they have to state a starting point, an axiom um, that they don't realize will lead to that conclusion. But if they're playing the game, the odds that that are true are 100%, right? Because no sane person who actually understands how logic works is going to fall for that trick. They're going to go, well, yeah, of course you can prove anything with logic. Duh. Right? Because they know, right? If you're good enough at logic, you know that that can be done. But I've done it many, many times. It's not that hard. So logic is actually arbitrary because it's a set of process tools. It's not a set of answers to a problem, right? You can use process tools to solve any problem, right? Well, if you can use process tools like logic, reason, and rationality to solve any problem, then it has to be arbitrary. Otherwise, it wouldn't solve any problem, right? That's basically the proof right there. Adam, should a hand gesture relieve us of the need to say hi in words? Well, it does. And how come a hand gesture can override all the words you say? Oh, well, that's easy because words are useless and worthless, and you shouldn't rely on them for anything because they're the most compressed form of communication that we have. Words suck. Terrible things. Don't use them. But if you're going to use them, you have to be precise in your speech, right? I communicate far more with my tone than I do with my words, right? Because your tone is deep and it can just convey a world that can open before your eyes, right? Now, I don't have to say open before your eyes. I can say it can convey a world, right? And that actually does a better job than the words. No one likes that answer. I know everybody wants to be able to read their way to victory, but sorry, reading is bad. Burn all the books. Darn. Or the motives of the people lying in wait to reframe everything someone does. Thank you, Don. I left that out. Yes. A lot of people are waiting for your bad framing or your activities to reframe you. And then use that to indict you. And I know people have done that to me. I actually mentioned earlier, right? Adam, when I realized I can only be responsive, oh no, you can take actions in the world. I choose better people to react to. Yeah, so maybe you don't suffer from this, but I'll just tell the story. So when I was young, I was a pretty good driver, and I had worked out how to drive. And the way I worked out how to drive was I had a windowing system, right? And now I'm a computer guy. I was raised on computers, right? More than one computer since the age of 8 or something stupid. So I drove basically with a mathematical formula. It's window size, can car fit in, blah, right? It's very good, super accurate. Well, one day I drove down to New York City around rush hour, and I encountered a new experience. And that was cars doing things that weren't possible. And I was like, what, what the hell? These guys are doing 80 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour traffic flow. Every car on the road is doing 65 miles an hour, except these retards. And there were like 4 or 5 of them at least. I mean, they kept coming, obviously, and going. And I was like, they're moving faster than the available traffic in bumper-to-bumper rush hour traffic. How is this possible? Like, there's no room. If there were room, I could do that. If there's enough. No, we're in New York City, man. We're outside New York City at rush hour. There was no room. There were no car lengths free. And so I puzzled about it, and I'm watching it happen around me, and I'm like, I don't even understand what's going on. Like, I'm usually the guy that's able to get through the traffic the quickest. Like, I've got this great system, and I'm applying the system. It's just failing left, right, and center. And I'm like, these guys can't do this. This isn't possible. What the hell is going on? And then I realized my entire system of calculation was response-based. In other words, I wasn't accounting for as a car, I wasn't accounting for my impact on the cars around me. I could do that for every car that wasn't me, no problem. It was 100% accurate. It was gorgeous, right? But then, right? Because I was like, well, how would I do that? Oh, it doesn't work. My system doesn't work. It doesn't calculate correctly, right? But then when I accounted for, oh, when this car is seen by this other car, that window moves. Oh, so it's the action of the car that causes the response of the other car that allows you to respond in a way that you can zoom through the traffic at 85 miles an hour, even though 99% of the cars are moving at 65 miles an hour. I'm still to this day blown away because I was like, wow. And that's when I switched all of my calculation systems to the world to flow systems. And I've, of course, never looked back. Discrete linear calculation systems don't work. For lots of reasons, right? I mean, there's gaps that you can like use to make up for, right? Whatever slop in the system. But like when you move to a continuous calculation system, everything changes. It's like, oh, things flow in the world. Oh, okay. Well, that changes everything. Oh, and I'm part of that flow. And if I do this, the things around me react. And therefore, every action I'm taking is causing a reaction. Right. Well, now that changes everything because the world opens up to you, effectively. Right. Panda person. Some people read for its own sake, which I don't see much value in. Yeah, no one reads for their own sake. They just kind of say that, but that's a lie. You don't do anything for its own sake. T. Sanders, love your work, Mark. You're always keeping it real. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I do. Adam, exposure is still preparing the terrain for learning. No, it doesn't. Opening yourself up to be exposed, maybe, but I watch people just walk through. I just had arguments with people about whether or not the Roman salute was real, whether or not anybody else ever did this. Like people just told me the fascists invented it, and I was like, that's such a stupid statement that I don't know how to explain to you how dumb you are. Right? And perhaps some people mistakenly stop at telling ground. They don't even do that. The real problem is people don't till the ground at all. Right? They drop the seeds and run. I'm looking at you, Pastor Paul. They don't even till the ground, or they till the ground, they drop the seeds, and they don't cultivate because it's hard. I mean, that's all the hard work. You've got to lead, and it sucks. Cannot recommend. Ixnay. Religion, culture, politics, Zoomers. I like that. Yes, can confirm. Adam, as a youngster, what frightens me about hierarchy is how much would remain of respect in a well-working hierarchy. Well, hierarchy is inevitable, so tough. Ties are broken. No, ties are made. All your ties are made in a hierarchy. Can join briefly soon. Uh-oh. Briefly. That is disastrous. What do you mean briefly? I don't know what you mean. Interesting timing though, eh? I didn't sleep after all. That's interesting. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yawn God. He did write fractal. Technically, yeah. Well, Yawn God. Sometimes I want to ask if you have dyslexia, but now I see I have the opportunity. I have unbelievable dyslexia. This always blows my mind. I'm like, you guys don't see any of those errors, huh? Wow, that's amazing. I make reverse errors all the time on everything. It's so bad that I usually answer emails in reverse order, and I just can't stop myself. It's terrible. I try. Panda person, I prefer Marshall McLuhan to Jean Baudrillard, even though I don't completely agree with either. Yeah, well, they're both wrong. So they also don't have overlapping work, but that's okay. Under agreeableness is not a nonsensical state. It is an identification against. It doesn't mean anything. right? I mean, first of all, you have to define agreeableness and in relation to what? And then what would under mean? Like, what are the standards and where are the measures? You don't have those because they can't exist, right? A deficit of a healthy amount. What's healthy? Intersubjective nonsense words. Agreeableness. Just like over agreeableness. I don't know what any of that means. I'm sure everybody thinks they know what that means, and they all mean something different by it. Might be a hint. Sally Joe, I'm fine with people sleeping to the stream so long as they are letting the ads play. Yeah, well, there's no ads on the stream, Sally. Not these. Adam, it's the will that's free to act for or against the agent. No. No. Agency is actually the correct term. Ixnon is bang on that. I hope you got that from me. Otherwise, I'll cry. Ixnon, it's kind of interesting how Blake 7 uses computers compared to people for logic and reason. Yes, it is. It is. Blake 7 is, of course, the greatest science fiction show of all time. Anybody who doesn't know this is wrong about everything they've ever thought in the world. Panda person, I'm confused. You said you don't do theology. You talk about it a lot with Father Eric. I never talk theology with Father Eric. I don't know any theology. I can't talk about theology. Talking about belief and religion is not theology. I don't know what you guys think theology is. It's got a very specific definition. It's very scholastic, and you need a PhD. So go get one. Don't have a PhD, you're not talking about theology. Mitchell Clark. Hello, everyone. Hello, Mitchell. Don, I hate driving, but not as much as I hate public transportation. So I drive. That is funny. I like that. Panda person. Mark should have posted the StreamYard link like 30 minutes ago by now. No, I post it when I'm ready. That's when it gets posted because it's my stream. And the person that determines that happens to be me, myself, and I. There we go. Don, there's no should. There you go. Mark drops the links after he catches up with all the comments. Thank you, Ixnon. I do, with very few exceptions. Occasionally, I'll let somebody in. Panda person. How smart I am is directly correlated to the fractal requirements for human cognition. No, it's not. There are no fractal requirements for human cognition. To refer to the concept of an intelligence spectrum, this doesn't make any sense at all, which is studied by my behavior. No, it's not. Jesse, welcome, my friend. It's good to see you.
Hailing from my new iMac. So.
Oh, you have a new iMac. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's funny. People throw out technology. They're like, oh.
Panda person. Baudrillard and McLuhan most certainly and definitely had overlapping work in media analysis. I guess it overlaps. I mean, in that it's talking about the same thing. It doesn't overlap in their conclusions. I don't actually think they're talking about the same thing, though. I think media, the way you talk about media matters, and I don't think they're talking about it the same way. I'm only helping sometimes somewhat. Is that correct? Ixnon, PhD or equivalent work experience? No. There's no equivalent work experience in theology, you muppet. I do like that, though. Panda person Mike seems to be like a lot of arbitrary and blazing basis assertions based on concepts with little to no reasoning or evidence for them. Oh, I always provide evidence and reasoning, right? Like I've done it all along. Like this isn't that hard, right? You don't like those answers, and that's understandable. But what do you think, Jesse? Where are you at with this?
Discernment. Gosh. Spiritual gifts. Moral axioms. Generational problems. Oh, now it's gonna. He left me to. Classic. He's like, you were like going on a
all of that
you're just dropping me in the deep end. You're like, it's your monologue now. I'm gonna go out. Gosh, I'm not prepared for that yet. Let me see.
No, all of that came up in the Vanderklay stream, which I thought was hysterical.
Gosh, yeah, it's kind of a self-inflicted problem not having discernment. from any wisdom or Stoic tradition, the pursuit of wisdom, which is the underlying thing that supports discernment, that's primary. So lacking that, for me, seems to be a generational problem.
Well,
seems like it's something that we've.
Yeah. It's. I mean, they always bring this up, right? The generational aspect, right? Everybody's bringing that up. I mean, there's something to the generational thing, to the boomers in particular.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, Jan, it doesn't change my point. Why do people think that? Yeah, never mind. I mean, we'll understand modifiers of words, right? Modifiers of words are actually important. Some words, if you modify them, you're already wrong. But anyway, this is a hard concept for everybody. I mean, we're still struggling with social justice being a thing, even though it's an impossible word combination that breaks the language. When you blame the boomers, there's something about that that's not wrong. But also the 1960s. And then the question becomes, oh, wait a minute. Did the 1960s do something to boomers and that got passed down? Right? And like, this is Byrne Power's thesis, right? The anadromist, right? Like how we got here, which is way too long, Byrne, but also very good. In some, I mean, I think he's wrong about a bunch of little things, should listen to it and take him seriously because most of what he's saying is right in the series, right? Preferably go on a long trip to New England, though, because that's the best time to listen to that stuff. It's very, very long.
I'm talking to him soon. I need to reach back out to him, but I'll let him know that he needs to do a meta-analysis or something like that.
Yeah, shorter. Like if you just shortened them all and didn't include all his favorite music at 20 minutes a piece. Dude, like give me like half a minute of the song, maybe. I don't need any of it, really.
You don't need every Miley Cyrus Cannonball striptease thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, but like he pins it at the trauma of the Great War. Right? That's where he starts everything. And I'm like, well, that's not far enough back. Because if you see it, quote, symbolically, I don't mean symbolically as in symbols. I mean symbolically as in using a poetic way of informing the world. See the Knowledge Engine model video, right? If you see it with the poetic threads, we'll call them, or the poetic symbols, right? You've got the materialism, the individualism, and the objectivism from the French Revolution, right? Which was born from the English Revolution. I have videos on all this. These are the videos with Adam, history videos with Adam. And yeah, we're going to record Russian Revolution on Saturday, so I should have it out next week.
Oh, gosh. 19th century.
Yeah. Good
luck to that.
I panicked one day because I said, wait a minute, what does this pattern of revolution tell us? And I was like, oh, no. And then I was, oh, no. Calm down, Mark. Chill out. But when you look at that, and you look at that effect, via Napoleon, basically, right? Because Napoleon's the pattern that everyone's following in the materialism and the scientific precision. Like that's all kicked off with Napoleon. You can talk about the Enlightenment and all that garbage all day long. It's meaningless, brivel-bravel. Not that it doesn't have a huge impact. Absolutely, it does. Right?
But Napoleon becomes the icon. He becomes the locality of this.
No, he's the exemplar.
Okay, yes.
Napoleon conquers the world, creates the modern state, with the help of that idea gets boosted by Bismarck. Of course, the French and the Germans do more damage to the universe than you can conceive of. Oh, I don't know which I hate more, the French or the Germans. Anyway, we all left.
English beheaded a king. The monarchists, but they better head a king.
That's true. Well, that's the greatest corporate takeover of all time by the largest corporation in history. Everyone whines about the corporation taking over the government today. I'm like, boy, you guys should learn about the East India Company. Man, are you gonna panic? And then you'll find out how much
There's a great
better we
series
are
called
now.
Taboo. There's a great series called Taboo that I recommend to people. It's not by any means a safe watch, but it is revelatory in the sense that you get the proper context of what's going on. You get the saturation of the world. You don't get any. It's not filtered. Maybe that way is probably a bit kind of tying back. Although it'll take some discernment because you have to. There's a bunch of witchcrafty stuff going on. So anyway, but
yeah. But I wanna address Don's thing. At least everything sounds better in French. I mean, to be completely fair, a lot of problems are translation problems. Like a lot of the Nietzsche stuff is a translation problem. It's like our English quotes for what Nietzsche said are just wrong, like just flat out incorrect. But totally different issue. When you see these threads of individualism, objectivism, and materialism, and then you figure out like they're everywhere, right? Including the church. And then you see the church receding as the result of these forces. And then you see the exemplification of Napoleon and then later Bismarck and the Germans, right? And then like I think Peugeot actually said it, but he did a way better job of this than I did. We're living in the myth of the second act of the Great War, right? And he said the reason why that's the myth, and because somebody asked him about it in one of his Q&As and they put it in a clip. The reason why that's the myth is because who's Satan? Hitler. Hitler is all evil, right? But then I make the technology point. All the technologies except possibly, but not definitely, the transistor that we're using now are German technologies from Hitler, from Hitler's Germany. All of them. Every single rockets, right? Jet planes, because those are separate. They did both independently, right?
Too,
we took the German scientists, like, nuclear power, right? The Germans were there first. It's all German scientists doing the nuclear work. It's no American scientists, right? I mean, they give the credit to Goddard in the U.S., but it's Warner von Braun who did the rockets, not Goddard. He wasn't getting anywhere, right? And so, but the complication is the second industrial revolution, which is the United States' third industrial revolution, as I found out by reading Moby Dick. Kind of weird. See Eric Seitz channel for that if you want to see the Moby Dick book club, because it was awesome.
Makes sense though.
If you're only going to watch one episode, there's two good ones, and I don't know what the other one is. If you're only going to watch one episode of that, just watch the last one, where I tie a bunch of things together because it's the end of the book. And there's a bunch of stuff there. There's another one. I'd have to find it, though. There might be two more where I made these really good connections. But whaling changes the world. New Bedford, Massachusetts is the city that lit the world.
Nationalism, yeah.
At the like we're changing. The U.S. is changing the world. And then along comes the second industrial revolution, which we flat out stole as criminals straight from the Brits because they're morons. And this guy Lowell had a I grew up in Lowell, by the way, had an eidetic memory.
Oh, that's right. And he looks at all the plans. Yeah,
he wrote it all down and brought it with him. They were like, "Oh, you can't bring any writing implements with you while we take you on tour." And he's like, "Yeah, that's
Japanese did that too with the Germans as well."
Now, to be fair, he when he got back, they improved all the gearing technology. Like everything the Brits were doing, they improved it. Like actually all of it, because we had that. Like we had that stolen technology, and so everyone starts to follow us as a quote Protestant nation without understanding the context. When you inject the Enlightenment into that, but you take out the fact that they're all believers, right? Or you strip the idea of successful quote nation or whatever, right, from the framework that it was built in. Just read the founding documents, right, for the United States. Then you come up with Europe. Europe's a mess. Europe's a mess for a reason, right? And that's following, sort of combining a bunch of Napoleon stuff, right? With a bunch of French Enlightenment, the entire French Enlightenment, everything they said was
Unification, yeah.
wrong. Just cheat sheet to French Enlightenment. Everything the French said about the Enlightenment was wrong. It's the Scottish Enlightenment that the U.S. is based on. No one in France contributed to the Enlightenment ideas here. That didn't happen. I'm just gonna let you know right now. You can do all the research you want. You're not gonna find it, right? So they combine those two things, right? And then they take what they think is this Protestant idea of secularism, right? Because the continentals don't understand non-continental philosophy, which is what we have. They barely understand British philosophy or English philosophy, right? Which is what we modified, right? So you get continental philosophy, you've got this modified philosophy in England, right? And then we come from that modified philosophy in England, we modify it again. We get rid of the king correctly, right?
League
or
of
maybe
Nations
not.
is American.
Maybe
League of
it wasn't.
Nations is American invention.
But my argument's always going to be we got rid of the king correctly because the U.S. has the longest lasting unchanged form of government in history. Now, I might be wrong about that, but you still have to go back to Rome. So it's kind of like, well, at that point, why do I care? You got to go back 2,000 years. If we had the longest lasting unchanged form of government in 2,000 years, we're doing okay.
Depends if you consider an empire a form of government or not. That's an interesting.
No, it's a way of governance, but an empire is not a government. There's lots of government forms in an empire. In fact, most empires have more than one form of government in the empire.
Yeah, Ottoman Empire, for instance. Yeah,
right. That's the difference.
Yeah,
that is the difference. Ixnon, I've decided the French are worse than the Germans. I blame the French for all the bad things. Just all of them. I just blame the French. It's way easier. Although it's hard to understate.
We've gotten pretty far from the
generational
impacts, though. The generational impacts of losing common morality. And let's just say a couple different, particularly Peterson is the biggest one to re-push this morality emphasis back in the zeitgeist, spirit of the age.
You mean the vertical causality? Where morality sits? Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
right. Well, how does he do it though? See, everyone gets this wrong.
Yeah.
They all get this wrong, including Peugeot.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like, bro, like hierarchy is older than trees. He says that first. Why? Oh my God, though, Jesse. Then he does an analysis of Pinocchio in We Who Wrestle with God.
I'm not gonna read that.
My Wrestling with God or My Wrestle with God, and it's horrible. And I'm like, what book did you read? You individualist, materialist psychopath. Like, where'd you get that from, bro?
That is the most fascinating story of the internet now. How did Peterson go from inspired to absolutely total
flat world?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not done. I got some good notes out of it, oddly, but like, what a disaster. It's so abstract. We went from 12 rules to life to this nonsense. And I'm like, bro, how'd you get? I thought you were going to do the 48 rules from Quora. That was the original plan, bro. Yeah. Do that. Don't do this. Burn this book.
It's strange, too, that he's, I don't want to make a Christian claim, but it's relevant. We Who Wrestle with God is talking about the new Jerusalem. That's Jerusalem or Israel. That's the root word of wrestling with God. And so what he's proposing is you heard it here first, people. It's not a Christian solution, that book. It's a counterfeit solution. So that's my claim. You can debate me on that. But tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, by the end of that book, if he's actually... If it's still fundamentally, you need to love philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not something higher than that, which is,
right.
Philosophy is still flat world. Still praising creation rather than
Well, modern philosophy is all sophistry. That's the problem. The closest thing to ancient Greek philosophy that we have is science fiction. Science fiction is very much like ancient Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
Right. Because like you look at the Republic, and the Republic could be best understood as a work of science fiction. And once you understand it that way, like, I see. They're because Glaucon and Socrates are playing God. Like they're the builders of the perfect city. Like they're the ones that are determining all the rules of the city. Right. And so if you put them in a modern science fiction context, it works perfectly.
One
Kirk.
of the problems I would say that of discernment that we lack started with the rise of the novel in some sense. Rather
No,
than,
the comic book. I'm telling you,
well,
man, comic books.
you don't get to one without the other. But
Did you hear my argument about comic books?
no, go on. So that's wild.
Superman is the mix between story and myth, completely broken. Because he's basically a god, and he's from a planet of gods, and he's the last one. And so he's not a hero, right? And then there's this split personality anonymity thing going on.
Yeah.
Right? And then on the other end, so that's it's not a mythos and it's not a story, because stories are about humans and a human life. And mythos are about either the gods or a hero. And he's neither a god nor a hero in the comics. But it's also a comic. Is it a story? Does it have a story? You know what I mean? Like comic books just break everything. Right? And then you have Batman, who like, and this is the appeal of Batman, right? So Superman is top down and Batman is bottom up, because he buys the technology and that makes him awesome. And then that motif is perfected in Iron Man. He just buys everything, and then he's able to make himself into a super being, into a hero.
Well,
and now all of a sudden Joseph Campbell's right, even though Joseph Campbell, everything he said was just completely wrong.
You think everything Joseph Campbell said was wrong?
Say what?
I have a lot of criticisms of Joseph Campbell, but his literature seems fine.
What literature? What are you referring to?
The hero's myth.
Yeah, it's completely wrong. Like everything he says about that is wrong. It's nowhere in literature. That's why he doesn't provide any examples.
I have to say, I mean, I'm not the biggest literature person.
What stories in the past? Sorry, I need to eat something. What stories in the past perfectly follow the hero's journey? Perfectly is the key word there. Because you can go, it kind of does the pattern, but then it's not the pattern. 4 out of 5 is not the full circle, and that's what he's claiming.
Right.
But
But what he's describing most of the time is the transformation of the main character, typically called the protagonist. That's all he's describing. And it's like, well, yeah, I agree. You have a protagonist who's not a hero, right? Because if it's a hero, it's a myth. It's not a story. Right? Important distinction, right? Because myths are abstractions designed to teach you a bunch of things. Stories can be abstract, but aren't abstractions. They're about specific implementations or events, right? The Battle of Troy, like, it's unrealistic for a purpose, and the purpose is to teach you a moral lesson, right? But like my trip to Reno, Nevada is not like, it's not that you can't get a lesson out of it. It's that it's not designed to do that. It's just like, oh, I went to Reno and here's what I did and here's how I did it. Right? That's a story. That's not a myth, because it doesn't contain any abstract characters that are multi-connected to the world. And that's really the difference. I don't know why people don't know this. Like,
there is no battle for Troy
in school.
It seems like kind of a semantic.
The Iliad does not have the battle for Troy.
Right.
If you don't understand that, you don't have discernment. When you read this is a mythology book about battle between gods and what it takes to be a good man. It's naturally a romance, but again, and even when you read the Odyssey isn't about. They're basically like, oh yeah, we took over the Trojans. We did this horse thing, and then we took over, and now we're going to Odysseus is basically going to go through the underworld and do a competing narrative against the Epic of Gilgamesh and say that Odysseus has more rightful claim to be an elite than Gilgamesh, or has more god blood or something like that. Sorry.
Let me catch up on comments. 40 True Rules Like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yes, X9. Adam, when my dad can't learn something from me, it breaks me because I lose an opportunity to learn from him. No, that's not how that works. Downward generation transition alone is the plague. No, not really. Not necessarily. Like, there's a lot of things I haven't been able to teach Jesse yet. So, also, Jesse's still pissed at me for me taking a year to learn a bunch of stuff from him. So it'll be fine. I know you're mad, Jesse. I know you're like, what the hell is wrong with this idiot? Why is he this dumb? I know that's going through your head, or has gone through your head. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. Have you finished
Adam,
Clockwork Orange yet?
Adam Dylan Major. Let's see. Maybe there are heroic episodes. Well, no. You can be heroic. You can have heroic qualities. Like, that's the emulation of the hero, right? Like, that's the hero is an exemplar for you. So the fact that heroic properties or qualities exist is different from being a hero. Right? This is a trick of language, right? Like, it's actually really important that we use the language correctly. Like, be precise in your speech. Yeah, Peterson has no idea. He has no idea, right? But not necessarily a heroic story. Look, heroes are a specific type of character in a story, right? That would elevate the story to a mythos because they're an abstraction of humanity, right? Heroes, even if they are referencing, we'll say, real, actual people, right? Because this is the way we talk about them, are amalgams of multiple humans. So if you are the fastest runner and the fastest jumper of all time, you could be considered a hero, but that would be endowed from above automatically. And the fact that you can emulate that is not interesting beyond the fact that somebody with, we'll say, one or more outstanding, or more than one outstanding quality can be considered, again, it would come down from above though, a hero, right? But that's because that's an abstraction now, because they're more than most people can only be extraordinary at one thing.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. We throw this word hero around. We're referring to a protagonist. And that's like, I don't know where this happened, because this is not how I learned it in school. And I'm like, I didn't go to college, so I don't know what the hell, like, where did you people go to school? Like, that would be my first question. And why couldn't you derive this on your own? Although, fair enough, I can derive a bunch of things that no one else seems to be able to derive, which frightens the hell out of me every day of my life, but whatever. But like, why is this hard? Like, I don't understand why this is hard. This is a really straightforward thing. My models of the world are infinitely simpler than everyone else's. I don't get it.
Your models of the world are interesting, to say the least.
See the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Yeah, well, that's an interesting and fun movie for sure.
Munchausen. Who's Baron Munchausen?
Oh, you should watch the movie. It's quite funny. I think it's based on a book. Isn't it based on a book?
I've heard of Munchausen by proxy, but I don't know if that has any relation.
That's where it comes from. It comes from the book and the movie. I think it's a book. I'm pretty sure it's a book. The movie's a riot. Does it have Robin Williams in it or something? I forget. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. But yeah, it's another. I mean, it's a. Yeah, I guess I'll step in that hole. It's another Don Quixote type story. Right. Maybe not of the same caliber or something, but definitely in that vein. We'll call it fantastical.
I think I may have seen this actually.
Robin Williams plays the King of the Moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Robin Williams.
Yeah, the problem with Mr. Campbell's work is that it becomes like Fight Club, it becomes the new template to reorder what virtue is. So it becomes a virtue by emanation or transformation, rather than
No, it's a virtue by emergence. This is the
well,
Vanderclay. Yeah, it's
okay.
an emergent. Well, it's an emergent from below. Adam, I try to use Fight Club plot twists to stories I want to analyze. Why? That's horrible. Fight Club is a terrible movie. It's all the same guy sort of thing. Yeah, but it's not. Jesse, we got to do our Matrix thing so that we can just show everybody they don't know how to watch a movie.
Wait, what Matrix thing?
What?
So we have a
Matrix thing.
we have a long running thesis on the perils of what the Matrix has caused. In a nutshell, it's the Matrix is a new foundational myth that
Right.
is used to incept
Good word.
essentially, reordering of virtue.
I've heard that I've heard somewhere that the Matrix was actually inspired by Baudrillard. The idea that like I've that so do you think the Matrix has caused this sort of postmodern mindset?
No,
There's nothing new in the Matrix. The Matrix is literally a blank slate. It absorbs everything in. It doesn't produce anything out.
It's a container into which you can project whatever modus you want. It's the result of adopting a postmodern attitude. And in that way, if evil can be brilliance, which it certainly can, the Matrix is brilliantly evil, but also evil. And I focus on the evil part, not the brilliant part.
Their directors, they were brothers at some point, and now they identify as sisters, and that's kind of weird to know about that.
That's a good hint to the dangers of the movie. Their previous work, which is called Bound, is even more interesting, I would say. Bound is a fascinating film.
I haven't dared myself to watch it yet. I guess Hey, cool kid, are you familiar with the work of Inception?
The work of Inception, I think I've heard of it.
The movie called Inception.
I believe I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
Okay. There's a way in which, when you engage with entertainment, that it is always giving you a worldview, a perception. And what often has happened in the postmodern mindset is they take you into a world within a world within a world within a world within a flashback sequence. And every time you're kind of getting further away from what is true, you're essentially becoming more dominated or more influenced by the author, for the lack of a better term.
So like
the crafter of the narrative teller is giving you more fragmentation. It's not pointing you. It's kind of the path that you're being led towards has more dead ends than it has conclusions.
Right.
So it's
you mistake the dead end for a conclusion.
That's exactly like Baudrillard's 4 stages of simulacra, where first you start off with like a crystal clear reflection of reality, and then according to Baudrillard, then you have like a distortion of reality. Then you get like an even bigger distortion in reality. Then the 4th stage is like the crystal clear, slight distortion, even heavier distortion, and then the 4th stage is the complete distortion, where you're completely broken off from any sort of authentic copy. It's just a pure simulacrum.
Right, but that's just the misunderstanding of the imaginal or the imagination. Right, that's where Vervaeke's work comes in really handy, actually.
Oh, Vervaeke talks about this?
I mean, not in those terms, but yeah, they're all talking. Everybody thinks these people have different work. It's actually all talking about exactly. Like, do we understand that we're all people and we have certain things in common, like an imagination? And the fact that philosophy has been talking literally for thousands of years about the fact that we can't interface purely with reality because we're trapped in our bodies and our bodies are imperfect and so what do you think everybody has to talk about? All the same thing because they have no choice. They can couch it in different frames and fool you, right? But like Baudrillard doesn't have any insight beyond the psychologists. Now the psychologists have less insight for various reasons. So why Baudrillard is popular, right? Because he reframes it in a slightly larger frame. And you go, ooh, he's so smart. I mean, he didn't say anything new at all. But that's fine. Like, yeah, you're disconnected from reality. But more importantly, and this is what's really important. I mean, this is one good piece of Peterson's work and Vervaeke's work. Like, you use your imagination to predict the real world, right? But your imagination can project far more than the real world's constraints allow. And so the key is to hone your imagination down so that it matches the constraints of reality as closely as possible. That's it. Like, it's no more difficult than that. Now, you don't only want to use your imagination for that because things like hope and potential are still open-ended and unknown and have a high uncertainty value, right? And so that's useful to know and it's useful to engage with, right? So you don't want to like hone it so it only sees reality. That would be autistic or something of you, and that would be bad, right? But you want to make sure that you know the difference of, we'll say, what, if you want to use Baudrillard's ridiculous outline, which of those stages you're in. Like, are you in pure imagination mode? Or are you in level 1 imagination mode? Or, where are you? Right? And yeah, you can do it from reality backwards. That makes no sense, by the way, because you don't have perfect access to reality. So talking as though you do or as though somebody else does is a psyop. You've already screwed yourself. Because you started from a bad point. You're going to logic and reason and rationality your way into a bunch of bad conclusions every single time. It's a guarantee, by the way. It has to happen that way. So if you're going to logic, reason, rationality your way from you have to do it from your free form imagination, where I still have a purple talking unicorn that none of you have ever greeted or responded to. I'm just saying, you bastards. Impolite. Totally impolite.
Not sure this will help you, Mr. Kirk, but the entertainment by its very word is a drawing closer to something. And what happens with, and you could say, a bad host, bad hospitality, is that you lose your sense of place, sense of connectedness, and then you get your ability to discern whether you should stay in an environment or leave, or you feel like the story is not for you, but maybe you want to finish it, or I've already done 17 episodes of a 23 TV show. Like, I know this is horrible, but I'll continue to finish it. You're essentially being manipulated into an outcome that's not going to serve you.
Right, Lost. Lost was the first, like, that broke the world. Lost broke the world. What a garbage TV show. Oh, dude, gosh. I'm still pissed. If I ever meet him, I am going to hit him physically. There's no question.
They didn't call it Bad Robot for a reason. That's what they are essentially wanting to do.
No. My friend has a theory. She told me at the time she was in the forums with those retards that were writing the show. And she swears the problem, and she's pretty smart too, although she doesn't think so, but she's actually quite brilliant. She swears the problem was that they thought they had a clever ending, and the people in the forum, because this is early internet days, they were not average IQ. They were way above average IQ, had figured it out. And so rather than end it after one season like they intended with the ending they ended up with, they kept trying to find a different ending. And so I think the constant mystery box thing, although yes, he did that in Alias, was actually an accident in Lost. And when I thought back about it, because she told me this, like, way before Lost was finished. She told me this story, and I was like, "What? You were in the forums?" And she was like, "Yeah, I knew those guys." And I was like, "Oh, what?" But and you'd be surprised how much media is like that, by the way. Right, but
I know
The
they were
Martian.
taking story prompts and inspiration from the forums too. Like
Well, that's what I mean. Like there's a lot of media, like Game of Thrones, right? It's all Snakes on a Plane is famous for this, right? It's all taken from the internet. It's all like stolen from the hive mind. It's all early AI in some weird sense.
I was about to say that. Yeah, I was about to say that.
Feedback right. It's all distributed cognition of other humans stolen.
Yeah.
And mashed together by poor orchestrators, right? By poor organizers. And that, I think, is the problem. But like, there's a lot of media that's been like that you don't really realize has been like that. And then there's a lot of that media that's been ripped off of, again, poorly. Right. And it usually doesn't work out. Although the TV series Kung Fu, for example, was totally stolen, worked out very well. Deep Space Nine, completely ripped off idea, worked out very well. Although Babylon 5 is probably better. I'm rewatching Babylon 5. I do love Cisco so much, though. I did such a good job with Deep Space Nine. It's so much the better Trek. It's the other Treks are just garbage, except Classic Trek, just garbage by comparison. That's see, Dawn, I'm still mad about Lost. I want all that time back. Me too. You have no idea what I was doing, Dawn. No idea. I had this special laptop, and I would like get it all I recorded it off the TV, and then I would play it with my buddy. So I wouldn't watch it live because he wasn't around or whatever, something. And so we'd sit and watch it together on a day of our choosing. I built an early DVR for myself using my computer equipment because I'm a psychopath and I can do stuff like that. And it was a tremendous amount of work. One time it broke, and it was a lot of work. Like, I put a lot of work into that damn show. And yeah. Ixnon, I do not care about Mark's purple talking unicorn. My tiger dragon would eat it. See how tough your tiger dragon is someday, Ixnon. I mean, but that level of manipulation where you don't actually know what's happened to you is going on all the time. And the fact that Hollywood lost the plot a long time ago, and has been inadvertently psyoping itself effectively, and therefore you too, is a side effect. And you can blame Disney all day long, but like the competency crisis, which I do have a live stream on, obviously, has caused a lot of damage in the society, and we haven't noticed. And I think that's why we have hope for Trump, because he's not incompetent. He may be a lot of things, but one thing he's not is incompetent. And yeah, he made a lot more mistakes, we'll say, the first time around. But now that he's been completely betrayed, he's gotten to see the snakes. And so when you understand that there's this incompetence that's causing the institutions to fail, that gives you a sense for the scope and scale of the problem. The solution is still not destroy the institutions, however, because we still need them, because we can't see ourselves clearly. And that's where the problem comes in. We can't, without institutions to contrast against and to tell us things that we can't tell ourselves, we can't be better. Like, we actually cannot be ourselves. We cannot self-improve, right? Despite what the Vervekis of the world will tell you. We can't do this thing, right? But the world needs you to be better, and we can't be better by ourselves, right? We can't self-generate our own betterness. And so it turns into a big problem, right? And if you don't understand a nice little map like this, although this is the old one, I gave the new one up here. I do have a newer slide, which Sarah did because she's awesome. If you don't understand the complexity of what knowledge is and how there's two types of knowledge, and it's formed from all this information, which is formed from these signals, then you're going to run into a big problem. And the problem you're going to run into is you're going to be manipulated by forces that you'll never be able to understand. Because there's lots of ways to manipulate a person. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to be prone to it. And if you're prone to manipulation, you're working for forces you don't understand. And that's really the problem. And you, if you think Elon Musk did a fascist salute, whatever that's supposed to mean, and that makes him like that one action makes him a fascist. Like, what do you think of all the other people who have done it, like Taylor Swift and AOC and the list goes on, right? Like, how are you going to understand the world if that's your conception of the world? If one salute determines your entire worldview and political ideology, what does that say for all the other people? And what does that say for you? And if you can't be convinced of your error, like the 65 billion people on Twitter I was arguing with, like, what are we going to do? Ixnat, if you do not have a religion, one will be provided for you without your knowledge or consent. Boy, that's genius, Ixnat. Where'd you get that from, man? That's pretty smart. Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line, right? At the end of the day. And that's what a lot of modern movies have been doing, right? Or recent movies have been doing, is they have been ungrounded from a religious hierarchical structure. And they have been inserting usually projector screens, into your life, and you are projecting on those screens. And so now more than ever, when you ask somebody a simple question like, who's the hero of the Matrix, you're very likely not going to get the same answer from every person you ask. Now, we all saw the same freaking movie. Why is that? Well, that's worth, that's worth taking seriously. Adam, well, that's the world's concern then. Why would I bother with the world needs? Well, the world is not an agent. It is created by us, or at least shaped by us, or co-manifested by us. Why did I fall into the trick of using the word creation? Damn it, Jesse, I'm never going to get away from that, am I? I'm going to continue to misuse the word creation.
It's
idiot.
The rate of information that which we've become familiar with, which is a very interesting word there, this has created that lack of discernment. And so that you can you actually are, and to Mark's credit, about the model, the world being simpler, one of the tricks that you'll notice with any magic trick is they flood you with information. Lots of things going on. This is coming here. This is going that. That's the thing. And you kind of lose that sense of, what's going to happen, or what is happening, or what is the point of which the story.
Which thread do you follow, and which thread do you predict? Because you can follow more threads than you can predict.
What it does is actually hijacks your curiosity, and actually, in some ways, pleases you, or use that rhetoric trick to overcome that immediate level of wanting to not be confused. By giving you what you want, an easy fix, you actually kind of are distancing yourself from the true pleasure. Maybe it's you can re-summarize that better, Mark. But that's one of the it's one of the paradigms that goes on quite easily, particularly within education. Like, the worst thing you can get, if you want to learn more, is to have a teacher that passes you too quickly.
Right. Right. Well, enablement is bad, right?
Yeah.
It's bad for everybody. and it's bad for the world. Don, the thing is, there are people who sincerely believe it was a Nazi salute, and there are people who know it wasn't, but are determined to persuade others to believe it was. Those are the same people that want the NPCs to follow them, and they want to see the limits of their power, right? And in many cases, they can get away with it, right? Because they don't understand how the world works, but they're using something that does work. But that's super dangerous because it doesn't. What they're doing is not working the way they think it is. And also, a lot of people are just accelerationists, and they're not wrong. Like, if everybody follows one thing, the world will improve. In the short term, that is 100% true. But if we all follow the wrong thing, it won't work in the long term, and that is when we get into trouble. Ixnon, we have to care about what the world needs because we're the idiots who live here. Right. Well, look, yeah. The world is the thing that we're all connected by. So if you don't care about the world will crush you, basically, right? And while you're busy not caring about the world, somebody in the world is going to use you, right? And so if you don't attend higher, you're going to attend across, and you better be real careful what you're attending across to. Like, you could join those little cults, for example. It's not the live stream today. It was just an admission of all the horribleness. It was overt. It was wonderful in some ways. They're all possessed by, following the exemplar of, depending on who you talk to, the seeker movement, the evangelical movement, right? Or I forget the other one, whatever the topic was. I don't even remember the topic, but the emergent church movement. That's what it was. It's one of those three. I would argue they're all exactly the same thing with all exactly the same satanic spirit, right? Because they're involving themselves in the lives of others instead of involving themselves in improving their own life. It's like, you're not supposed to improve other people's life in Christ. That makes no sense. You're supposed to improve your own life in Christ. This isn't that hard, right? Like, I don't know where you guys are getting this from. But they they're trying to do the seeker thing or the emergent thing or the evangelical thing. And it's like, yeah, but you're not supposed to do that. What you're supposed to do is make yourself better. Right? But by this, this interaction.
Oh, sorry, my phone died.
Oh,
that's all right.
Happens.
Glad to have you back.
Let's see. What were we talking about before I came back?
Well, we're talking about your manipulation by the movies, effectively, right? By the narrator or the director of the films that you're watching.
I don't really watch many films nowadays. I've watched a few. Not the biggest.
You're not the only person in the world. Ixnon. Paul, quote, Father Eric is right, but I don't care, end quote, Vandercliff. Dude, you said it, not me. Also completely accurate.
I don't think I ever said I was the only person in the world.
Yeah, it was a spectacular stream in many, many ways. It was also funny to listen. Like, the number of people that obviously weren't listening to what was being said or weren't understanding the implications of it. I was like, really?
Yeah, I mean, what's your favorite genre of movies? For you, Mark?
I don't have a favorite genre of movies.
I like different genres, but like the only genre I really dislike is I'm not a fan of horror at all.
Why is that?
I just I just have negative emotional reaction to it. I don't know if I could give you like
that different from other reactions to movies or storytelling?
Well, when I watch a horror movie, I'm normatively scared, and I don't like being scared. And when I watch a comedy or I watch I don't watch romance movies because I don't really like romance movies. But if I watch a comedy or if I watch an action movie, I might feel sad, I might feel happy, I might feel joyful, but I don't feel scared. generally speaking, and that's a good feeling. So yeah, I don't know if I can reduce it further than that. It's sort of a brute fact of my emotional response to these different genres.
So do you think there's anything else there that's driving that sense of fear?
I don't think so.
Is that an honest answer?
Yes. Well, why else would I be feared of horror movies? Are you trying to insinuate there's some subconscious
Well, they're
motivation,
by
or
nature designed to make you feel fearful.
exactly? So, and I dislike that feeling, which is why I said I don't
But
like the
what you
genre.
haven't you just said you have a feeling, but you haven't said what that feeling is actually based in.
The feeling is fear, and the
Well,
fear
I
is
said that. I said that, but you haven't. You haven't claimed that.
I thought I said. Okay, if I haven't, I apologize. I meant to say
Yeah.
the feeling I have when I respond to horror movies is fear, and I don't like that feeling.
How do you get that sense of fear?
I don't know. I
How
just
do you
watch a horror
discern that?
movie. I just have to experience it. Like I, I don't know how else to describe it. When you watch a horror movie, or at least when I watch a horror movie, and that's not true for all people, I basically get scared, and I dislike that feeling. I can't really fully describe the feeling using words. You just sort of have to experience it.
How do you tell the difference between a horror film and then a thriller film?
I
What's
don't quite
the discernible
I don't quite
difference?
understand the difference between them. I'm not really somebody who's very
Well, I'm just
knowledgeable.
saying these are categories of ways of perceiving reality that people use to discern, to maybe say, "Oh, I can handle this," or "I can take on this amount
Right.
of emotional manipulation, but not that." So how do you discern that?
I don't know.
Yeah, like I know what you did last summer is more of a thriller movie than a horror movie, right?
I
And the
don't
horror
quite
isn't in the fear. The horror is in the gore,
I don't
which
quite know the difference
doesn't
between
scare me.
thriller and horror. I don't quite know the difference between those two genres. I'm not saying there isn't. I just
What's the
say I
difference
don't
between a
know.
comedy and a romance?
So romance is generally about a romantic relationship between multiple people, and then typically two people, and then a comedy is a feeling that's try to instill laughter and happiness in the form of laughter. So that's the difference.
Hmm.
I'm confused. Are you trying to get to some deeper point, or is this like
Oh, this. Oh, yeah.
What's
Oh,
a
yeah.
rom-com?
what's a rom-com?
Yeah.
It's a merging of the categories of romance and comedy. Because, like, if we're playing 20 questions right now, I don't really like playing 20 questions.
I'm just trying to get you to talk and share how you understand the world, and how you what tools are you using to discern reality and phenomena.
Reality is that which can, well, reality is the state of things as they actually exist.
How do you understand that?
What do you mean?
So
That's a
I would
very
say
vague.
reality is a phenomenon. Let's say it's what you experience and what you use from your experiences in the past and what you can understand and experience in the future. It's not a state.
Right.
I can drink a glass of water. I can say, "Oh, that water's there," or "It's not there. The water's in me. The water's changed now." They're all states.
I mean, yeah,
Good to
I
see
don't
you,
quite,
zealous.
I don't quite understand what you're asking.
Well,
I'm
you asked a simple question, like, what do we like? What don't we like? Right? And you said you don't like horror movies, or that
yeah,
sense of
I
being
told you that
manipulated.
I dislike the normative associate. I'll say this. I dislike the normative emotional association I personally, as an individual, have with horror movies.
Normative?
Yes, I normatively experience the emotion of fear when I see a horror movie. Not always, but
Normatively
normatively.
experience?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to invoke the Princess Bride. But I got to deal with comments. So, Adam, I mean, the world absolutely outsources it needs to me. No, it does not do that. The world needs you to, and the second person is bad framing. No. No, it's actually just an exact trick. The question is, what is the world? The world is the sum total of all the people in it. Dun, dun, dun. In other words, the world is an abstraction that doesn't exist without the people in it, and therefore, everybody needs everybody else to be better. Right? We all need to be better. Like, that's basically all it's saying. But that's it. Speaking of how you see the world, and then Dawn, we traced the calls, and they're coming from inside the house. Gave me nightmares, and I only saw the commercial for that movie. Some people are super sensitive to the unknown, right? Or the unusual, right? The flip. So
the unnormative.
I don't use the word normative because it doesn't actually mean anything, right? So it has to be defined with a bunch of numbers.
The typical. The normative is the state of things that they normally are, or as they occur to be with some.
No, but movies don't work that way, right? They work on expectations, not on normativeness or typicality or whatever.
Expectations are norms.
No, expectations are not norms. John is not a normal person for seeing a commercial and then having nightmares. Okay, that's not a normal response. Right? It's her response though, and that's fine. I know other people who had that response, but it's not the normative response, right? Like, that's not normative.
Well, then how's that an expected response? You said what does that have to do with normative being different from expectation?
Okay. My expectation has nothing to do with normativity and for anything ever. The two have no overlap, right? Because I am an unusual person, right? Because I see the world in a very different way from everybody else, right? And although many times I can do this, although I prefer to never do it because I just don't give a shit. I can't always predict normative responses. Even when I try really hard. But most of the time I refuse to try really hard because I just do not give two shits about it.
I mean,
I don't care how everyone else is going to react to something. I really don't. I care about the truth, the good, and the beautiful. And I don't care about normativity because it has no overlap with those three things. That's a problem for me.
I mean, again, I don't see what this has to do with expectation. Like, if I see gray clouds outside in the sky, I expect gray clouds to indicate rain because normatively gray clouds are associated with rain. So the normative association between
I don't expect that because normatively that doesn't happen where I live. So your normative is worthless to me. We get gray clouds all the time and no rain. So I don't expect that.
Well, you're right. And each individual experiences a series of phenomena that are independent of other people's.
Then you shouldn't appeal to normative with other people. You should only use normative in relation to yourself, and then that might be fine. Also, it's a weird way to talk, so I would never use that term. It's a philosophical woo-woo garbage term, but like you're not going to be able to communicate with people if you do that, because if it's as subjective as you suggest, and I think it is, it's a worthless term to use with other people. You can't have a conversation.
Okay, Mark. Yeah. Okay.
Are you trying? If I, Mark might not do this, but I could be a little bit more charitable. If we have shared experiences, right?
Well, there are intersubjective phenomena or series of phenomena that multiple individuals report to, and these intersubjective experiences of phenomena we'd normatively classify as science or models or statistics. So, for example, multiple people report after using, say, cocaine to have increased energy. So we have a normative scientific model like that. Is there a specific question about that?
I didn't understand anything you just said.
I didn't either. So
So if
That
you
was
and
my
I,
earlier point, Kirk, but sure.
if
Do it
you,
again and see if
I,
it works.
and every Tom, Dick, and Jerry in your city all, I don't know, did something. Let's say we all flipped a coin.
You're saying, okay, I'm in Sydney, Australia. You said everyone in Sydney, Australia does cocaine at the same time, and we
That's
therefore
not
can
what I'm
call that
saying.
normative because we've all had the same
No,
experience.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying science or models or statistics are the normative intersubjective um, like understandings we have because of shared phenomena and or reporting of phenomena. So the scientific, if let's say within one city of people, they all say have a habit of in the morning brushing their teeth with Colgate, then it turns out Colgate has better response than using mouthwash. Then the normative science of that city is that Colgate is better than mouthwash because that's the intersubjective phenomena that's reported upon or experienced. Does
What
that
are you
make
worried
sense?
about? What's worrying you? Why are you here?
What do you mean what's worrying me?
Well, you're coming on and using language that's not familiar to discuss something that I'm not sure what you're intending to discuss.
I'm I'm discussing what you were discussing, which was about normativity, expectation.
We weren't discussing any of that.
I
Well,
was talking about
that's what
discernment.
okay, then perhaps here's a better way to phrase it. That's my individual perhaps a misinterpretation of what you guys were talking about.
What do you think science is? What do you think drives people to want to do science?
It depends on the individual.
What's normative about that?
Hold
I
on.
didn't say wait. So
Yeah.
I don't
Sally,
know if
people are
I don't
dumb
know.
and we need them, and that makes me sad. Well, that's a good.
I
Yeah,
don't know if
Sally,
they're
that's tough.
normative. I don't know if they're normative, shared intersubjective reasoning for
I think this whole
science.
John thinks this hole is getting deeper, Kirk. I don't know. You're kind of on the wrong side of this one. Sally, science is dissection, only tells you about fractured dead things. That's correct, Sally. More information will not help. Right, yes. Adding information to a bad frame won't help.
More? What? You mean my mother?
Probably.
Okay, if by Ma you mean mother, she's fine. I have no clue why you asked that question.
Because she wants to make a reasonable personal connection with you rather than have you stuck in some unintelligible scientific set of definitions that don't relate to any of the people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, anyway, so just to wrap up this point, Jesse, you asking why I dislike horror. I'm not gonna restate my answer. I've told you about several times now that it's because I dislike the feeling of fear that's associated with horror and most thrillers. I don't know the exact parameters of what counts as horror or thriller or any other genre because
I don't know what you
I'm
count
not
as
an
fear.
expert in movies. But I experience fear in such a way that I have negative reaction to it, and so I don't watch horror normatively.
What is fear versus anxiety?
Fear is fear, and anxiety is anxiety.
Hold on. Sally, bingo. My mom is healthy and makes me insane weekly for fair game, Kirk. There you go.
So, like Jordan Peterson talks about when there's a snake around you, there's an evolutionary biological response. You feel anxiety, but you also feel fear. So how do you delineate between the two?
I'd have to consider it. I mean, my understanding is anxiety is fear, not fear. Anxiety is like a negative emotional reaction to uncertainty. I could be wrong, but my understanding with anxiety is that it involves uncertainty, whereas fear doesn't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily involve uncertainty. Perhaps anxiety could be a subset of fear, or perhaps fear is like a broad class, Anxiety is a subset of fear that's based on uncertainty. So perhaps that's the best way to conceptualize it.
Well, you can be anxious, but you can be in a state of non-fear. So why would it be a subset?
Well, I'm saying it could be. I'd have to think more about it. I say, I don't know of. I don't quite know the difference between these emotions because I'm not a psychological expert or somebody who knows a lot about classification of emotions or personality.
But it's not to do with that.
Emotion, though?
What was that?
Is fear a base emotion?
Is fear a base emotion?
As in, it's something that you could say that every single human being has the potential to experience.
Not necessarily. Sociopaths and psychopaths, for example, might not experience fear.
How do you prove that?
I didn't say you could prove it. I said that's a possibility.
Well, then what's normativity then? If it's all just possibilities.
I gave you the definition of normativity. I'm not going to
No,
give
you
you
didn't actually. You gave me a word salad, and I said I didn't understand what you said.
Okay. I'll this is the last definition I'm going to give of normativity. If you ask again, I'm not going to answer again. Normativity is a class of recurring instances with some exceptions. So it's normatively the case, at least in my experience, that gray clouds indicate rain because it's a recurring instances of gray clouds leading to rain. But in my experience, there are some individual exceptions to that rule because some gray clouds don't lead to rain. So it's normatively case that gray clouds equals rain, but not always the case. I hope that's a satisfactory definition.
No, it's nonsense. John, anxiety is anticipatory. That is correct. Right. Yeah, right. It's the flat world problem, right? Like there's no anxiety in the flat world. It's all fear. In the vertical causality where there's actually future and potential, you can resolve a bunch of things. Andre says anxiety can be anticipatory, but it doesn't have to be. Well, I don't think so, Andre. I think all anxiety is anticipatory.
Well, right. Yeah, I don't see how you could non-anticipatory anxiety. I think anxiety by definition involves anticipation that involves uncertainty.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's correct, right?
Well, what about anxiety in the moment? Anxiety happening to something happening to you right now. You get anxiety over it. You're not anticipating. I mean, you can be anticipating in tandem, but
no, your lack of ability to anticipate can cause anxiety. That's the issue. In other words, John's correct. It's an met or unmet expectation of the future. It's not right. Like I don't know where I am causes me anxiety. That's not because I'm predicting I'm in a dangerous place. It's because it's because my prediction was wrong. And that causes anxiety. I mean, Peterson does talk about that, right? If you make a wrong prediction, you can get stuck in anxiety. And therefore, anxiety is about the future, and fear is about the present. And it either can be wrong, right? Like you can anticipate incorrectly. That's called worry. Sometimes you have an anticipation that is false or worthless. We'll say unimportant. But that's different from having a correct anticipation, right? Like if you're watching, well, like I said, like if you watch I Know What You Did Last Summer or something like that, like it's not a standard type of horror movie because it doesn't, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't rely on standard horror, right? It's a new form of horror in some sense, right? Where zombie movies are a form of, we'll say, existential horror, right? That rely usually on multiple, but the early zombie movie, I think, only really relied on one form of horror, which was the horror of zombies, right? Which is the big topic around Vervaeke and Peterson in particular, right? And Peugeot, because they talk about zombies. So there's different forms of horror. And that, I think, was more what Jesse was getting at, like which horror movies, because there's different types of horror movies. And
horror of what?
Friday the 13th, for example, why is that scary? Because ultimately, other than the jump cut horror, which, I mean, that's not horror, right? It's just it's just designed to do something unexpected so that you react, right?
Or
it's not
you
scary.
expect. They're actually playing on what you're expecting, giving you what you expect, and that causes a state of anxiety to bring in what.
Well, Friday the 13th in particular, right? Like that very much relies like that. I bet that movie doesn't work anymore, and not because
it was the first one as convention.
Yeah, but the original won't work because it plays off a religious ideal, and that ideal's gone because we're living in the age of pornography now. So
it also relies on an anachronism that, like, the idea of going to camp and being like secluded, like you don't have a smartphone, don't have digital access.
It's unrelatable.
Camp counselors, you're on. Yeah, it's unrelatable. You're on your own. It's a product of the time, like the late 80s.
Right. The thing that makes it scary is that dichotomy between right behavior and wrong behavior, and the wrong behavior. Like the entire plot relies ultimately, you find out later, on the pattern of the wrong behavior being, the whole thrust of the plot comes from the pattern of the wrong behavior being repeated, and that's what causes the action that causes the murders. But you don't know that in the beginning, which is part of the buildup. But you don't know the specific story, but you still know that the actions are not entirely unjustified.
You're talking about part one. Jason doesn't appear until, I think, part 3 in the hockey mask. Part 1 is like a mutant.
The story's in part 1 of why he's doing what he's doing, but it's not until the end of the movie that you find out what is motivating him.
I agree. Yeah.
But the reveal of the motivation doesn't have an effect. Effectively, the first one's a moral tale, right? So the question is, why would a moral tale be so unexpected as to fall into the horror genre? And the answer is because you know that the punishment may be harsh, but it's not totally unjustified. And that's the difference.
In fact, it's that perversion of justice that's actually the most insidious thing about that whole franchise. It's because there is the 80s has this glossy hedonist mentality, and so it's using these external validators or these monsters on the fringe, so essentially creatures of emergence, to kind of rectify or change the situation, but it's not changing it for good. It's actually kind of it's more flattening. It's actually taking away potential or the youth, essentially, for those the 3 or 4 mainstays of that whole franchise of horror that we have so clearly now articulated is actually dealing with taking away or pulling apart youth or the potential of the future. Whether it's Freddy versus Jason, that's it's the sins of the past coming to haunt the present state. Friday the 13th, it's stealing the seed, literally, or misusing the seeds of the future. And then Halloween, which is that sense of that which is meant to bring people together is now being reverted away from religious dogma to this back to the pagan blood-letting rituals. Yeah.
Real quick, I think I gotta go soon. How long are you gonna keep streaming, Mark?
Probably not much longer, but you have to
go.
It's fine.
No, it's okay. I don't really have to go. I mean, about how much longer do you predict?
I don't know, dude. I don't I don't plan these out that way, so I can't answer that question.
Okay, yeah. I mean, whether or not I'll leave now or I'll leave in a little bit depends on how long you're going to track this on. Because if you're going to end soon anyway, I don't see any reason to leave now.
That's interesting rationality there. Jesse, when can we do this Matrix thing, man? We gotta bang this out.
Well, I just literally found out in the stream that I have to move sooner than I wanted to, so that's yeah. And I'm moving interstate too, which is not. It's not just like up the road. It's like 14 hours drive away.
Where are you moving?
We're moving to Adelaide. Yeah, we're moving across the south.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh,
Changes the dynamics. Yeah, closer to family. So that'll be. It's one of the gives and takes. Yeah, it's been yeah, it's a new interesting season to walk through.
It's gonna be time.
Requiring
You're not gonna have time
discernment.
before that. Is that the problem?
Well, now that I know a better sense of timeline, it will help me. Yeah, just trying to figure out when where the block pieces are, which has prevented me in the last couple of weeks to just kind of go, when do I need to have everything packed by and all that sort of stuff. Let me work on that timeline, and then find it. It'd be really good to at least get that essential 45-minute thesis statement out there. Would require a bunch of work from us, but I'm not worried about that. I mean, if we just recorded half of our chats, Mark, we probably have a 20-page volume.
If only, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's do that. And also, Anne, that was an interesting development too. And Crawford, that chat on monsters.
Oh yeah, on X today. Yeah, Annie Crawford. Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
That would be a very interesting chat to have. We'll see if she bites.
I think so.
Yeah, she seemed really interested in your thesis there. I've got to chew on that more. I know you've mentioned to me before, but I'm still like, I don't see where you're going with that, but that's okay.
Every generation wants to feel like they have the power to change things. Now, the problem was in the past, particularly of the 60s, was this will have some sense of power or authority or freedom, peace. They're all things that were said in the past, but now we've got the claims of the previous generation, the 40s prior to that. That's where you get the two wars from. That was done on a sense of morality, whether it was perverted or not. That's a question. But by the time you get to the 60s and the 80s, that inheritance of generation, it's about hedonism. We'll get that through greed and pursuing pleasure, kind of rebelling against any sense of the previous sins. And now we have this next iteration of that cycle.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's essentially constantly eating of the previous flesh.
Jesse, could I ask a slightly tangential question to that?
Sure.
So, are you familiar with the strong men make weak times make strong men make weak times again, etc., etc.? You're familiar with that meme?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you think about that thesis?
Well, it's fatalistic. That's
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I think it's too deterministic, but I'm curious what you think about it.
I think there's a huge difference between determinism and fatalism.
Well, I do think it's deterministic to an extent, because it's basically saying history operates by this like cyclical, completely like environmentally based manner. Whereas I would say that volition can allow individuals who are otherwise raised in weak cultures to become strong and strong cultures to become weak just by virtue of their own volition without necessarily being influenced by their environment.
Go back to what you said. You really rushed a sentence in there. Something about volition.
I think volition allows individuals to be exceptions to the pattern of behavior described by the great men cause weak times, or strong men rather create weak times paradigm. I think people have free will to like not obey that paradigm.
How would they know they were in it?
Well, I don't necessarily think most people are conscious of that type of
Okay. So the fact that they have the volition to do it is irrelevant then. Okay.
The problem is it's there's an inherent, Carlylean or Nietzschean sense there of the will to power.
Right. It's a power-based framing, and power-based framings are all completely wrong. Like it's not that hard.
Okay, so you would say you disagree with that?
I would say it's what authority or what sense of divine or what gift you have, where you get that power from.
Yeah,
because repentance by definition, repentance by definition is that could be within that pattern of, and you see that as a biblical motif. We're not doing things right. We're rebelling against that. We become weak. I was literally reading about this the other day, and then Isaiah 2, I think, basically God's going to fast everyone, destroy everyone. Everyone becomes judges, everyone gets wiped out. Even the youth basically inherit the land, and they make a mess of it. And then, but if there's a remnant of people that pursue what's true, good, beautiful, what's divine, then they'll be saved. And that's the seed. The problem with the cycle you're talking about is it misses out. Do the faithful, are they going to endure, or do the faithful themselves also get wiped out?
There's too few moving parts to describe anything. Yeah. So it's a real pattern in the world that you can map to, but then there are dozens of those, and they're all unhelpful. They may not be wrong, but like lots of things are true and useless. Like most true things are useless and unhelpful and non-predictive because you can't see them.
The other thing too is that because we have had this such, I would say, materialism as a dogma, we associate apocalypse as in the end of things as being a final cause, and that's what also that cycle of weak to strong, strong to weak. It makes it kind of obscures. Well, things do actually have to end. There has to be renewal, just as like when once it's fall and heroes are risen. This is just a natural pattern of things. We fall asleep. It's the end of the day. It's a small apocalypse, and then you rise again in hope.
Right.
But it's like a lot of things that are a slow bit of poison in the well, right? And if that's the only well you're drawing from, which is a sense of stoicism or materialism,
right,
you just you're not going to you're just sustaining that which is impure. Does that help you?
Yeah, there's no renewal or purity in there, right? Or ability to purify, more importantly.
Yeah. Well, that's that cycle I was talking about too, with previous generation, and then we go, okay, well, we'll make up from the Great Walls by pursuing this hedonism lifestyle, but there's no sense of actually renewing. We're just going to eat, consume, and become the inheritors of a broken cycle. We're not actually we think we're changing things by holding the peace sign and having a good time, but nothing's actually being changed.
Right.
Again,
right.
Materialistically, you can say, oh yeah, a lot of things changed, science, but then you go, well, after the 1940s, no new scientific inventions have actually been made. Like there's a lot of phenomena. Yeah, it's a lot of phenomenon to say. Well,
one potentially one. I mean, computers, but yeah, even the computer age, even if the Germans didn't invent the transistor, the computer age is predicated on the Enigma machine, right? Encryption and communications, all of that is strictly a German invention.
You can go all the way back to Charles Babbage and his analytical machine.
Or you can go back further to the German that invented the same thing earlier. And that's the problem, right? Or you can go all the way back to, oh shoot, no, I don't remember the French guy's name. He did the Jacquard. You can go back to the Jacquard loom.
Oh, yeah, the looms.
Marconi did not invent the radio. Tesla did, and he won the patent afterwards, after his death, unfortunately. Also, I've been to the Marconi's original transmission site on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, because I could go. Although it's fallen into the sea because they refused to protect the shoreline because JFK was an idiot. He's right about most things too, because he's still the best president ever, but different problem. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Jesse. I mean, I think the problem with the generational thing is generations don't work as a mapping, except in extraordinary cases. And the only extraordinary case seems to correspond with the 1960s. But I don't think that's a generational case. The way I can see it working is when you get a mimicry through the hierarchy, weird things happen. Right? And that's one of the things that Byrne points to, although he doesn't do it the way I would do it. Fair enough. Like, nobody should do it the way I do it. That's fine. I'm happy to be unique in that way. Right? Where you've got the the upper class or the middle class emulating the lower class, right? And going, ooh, I want to be a rapper, sort of a thing, right? And idolizing, right? Well, that's his best work,
right? Just a minute of what is this thing based in? It's based in the music video rather than the actual reality of.
Oh no! His best point, and I didn't know this, is that
the stolen technology. Yeah,
rap is born from theft.
Yeah, sampling,
like actual theft. It's like, well, that's a weird coincidence. Except it's not. It can't be, right? Like, but now we know there are no coincidences. Like, holy crap! Like, this is right. And then once you see that it's an incompetent person trying to emulate a musician and doing the best they can, right? And it's not, we'll say, bad or anything, but it's also not music at the same time, right? Then it's like, oh no, this all makes so much sense. You've lowered down this, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of music equipment, and down to the lowest layer of the city, if you want to put it in platonic terms, right? And they can't handle it. And so instead they produce this perversion of music called rap. Yeah, I was just like, oh man, I remember where I was driving when I heard that. Yeah, I nearly drove off the road. I was like, because these things come to me all at once, right? Like I don't develop this stuff over time most of the time. Most of the time it just goes snap. It's like everything connects immediately. And it's like, oh no. Like, I see the pattern now. It's like, holy crap. That pattern was completely unexpected. So yeah, I mean, that was one of the useful things that I got out of the Anadromous channel and how we got here, which but his thesis is wrong. It doesn't go far enough back. It's got all kinds of holes in it. He doesn't. There's a bunch of stuff he might be right about, but he didn't actually make the case for in the series, right? Because he's too busy playing his favorite hits or whatever for music. I really like Burn, but sometimes I'm like, dude, I want to strangle you right now. Can you just move it along here? It was a good series.
His best video is the magic video. His video on the sleight of hand. So, but even then, he's not making. He's only kind of representing.
I thought he could have done a better job with it, Jesse.
Oh,
I didn't. Okay. I thought he could have shown the cognitive. I thought he was going to show the cognitive overload.
It was implied.
Right.
Well, that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to get to, and that's why I'm here today. Is that sense of cognitive overload is what we need to fast from. And I've been thinking a lot about fasting.
Well, recently. Right, but why? But why? And what do we substitute it with? Right. And so the discovery that we made, right? So if you watch the Language Creation Book Club, for example, because Manuel just does such a good job. Don't watch the ones where I run it. Or Gustav's. I mean, Gustav's does a decent job, but Manuel is just a master at this. It's the integration portion. Right. It's the taking the silent time where no one's talking. We're not getting feedback. It's not meditative. It's contemplative or reflective. Like, well, why? And what's a better way to do that? Well, a better way to do that is actually tied it up with my Zen sweeping, my anxiety stuff, which I actually have to build a course around one of these days. I keep telling myself I'm going to do it and getting distracted. Where you do something with a lot of muscle memory. Rote sweeping is my big example. Zen sweeping is what I call it, right? But you can do the dishes. You can do pretty much anything that's got a lot of repetition in it. And that physical repetition in silence is when you do all this integration. And that's why one of the smartest and wisest people that I know is actually effectively a redneck with a deep Southern accent from, he lives outside of Memphis, Tennessee. He's originally from Kentucky. And what he does is he drives around the country. He goes all the way to frickin' Georgia, man. That's a long ass way. I mean, I got to think Memphis to Georgia, to the part of Georgia he's going to, because it's actually south of me even. That's got to be 10 hours, I think. It's something in that range. It's 8 or 10 hours of driving. But he goes further than that because he goes way all over the stupid country. And he fixes chicken feed machines. That's what he does. And he listens to audiobooks. And so he's way better read than I am on philosophy and a bunch of other stuff. It just pisses. I tell him all the time, I'm like, Jefferson, you can't know this stuff. That's not fair. You're not supposed to know this stuff. You fix chicken machines, damn it. You deal with freaking dirty, smelly birds. Like, what's the matter with you? So yeah, I call him the redneck philosopher king. And he is like around the like he knows Vanderklay and stuff.
Right. Okay.
But I met him on Clubhouse independently. I didn't meet him on Vanderklay's thing. He might have recognized me from Vanderklay. I don't think he'd ever been on, I don't think he ever popped his head up. Sally Joe, information fasting, processed food fasting, over awareness of people far away fasting. Right. Attending to things far away fasting. Right. What if you do physical repetition while listening to this live stream? Yeah, well, there you go. Been putting in a floor half this time. Well, good, Sally. I'm glad you got time away to start finishing the floor. I'm of two minds of that. Like, there's the active listening thing. It depends on what you're listening to. Now, I will always argue, and I might be totally wrong about this because I mean I can't see myself clearly. I'm always thinking that I'm more clear than I am. I would argue that listening to me while you're doing something else will help you understand me because I'm saying very simple things. And if you're focused on something else and not focused on reading into what I'm saying, which will just screw you up, because I'm very precise in my speech, so you don't need to do that. And if you try to do that, you'll project, right? I think that's actually an advantage for listening to me. Now, when I listened to like Vervaeke, I used to tell people this all the time. No, you don't understand. If you try to do something else while you're listening to Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, it ain't going to work. And possibly Maps of Meaning. It's not going to work. And because there's too
Oh
much
yeah,
information.
I listen to most of that
Right.
meaning roasting coffee, like that's so, which is highly repetitive. Literally, stand here for 2 minutes, wait
Yeah.
for something to happen, push a button, go do something, come back, push the next button.
It sort of depends too what you're doing, but like integration is a big factor, but
Yeah, that's what I'm
also
talking about.
also keeping yourself busy enough in some cases so that you're not projecting as a factor. So there's not one good answer to this because it really depends on your relationship to the context.
Yeah. Well, I guess my monster theory is the fact that we keep integrating that which is corrupting from if we could
Well,
say from the 16th century, but
No, we're not integrating. We think we integrate. Like for example, people think
well,
like
eating, consuming is from trying. We're
yeah,
eating flesh. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
maybe, but I think it's more distracting. Like this is why I think Peterson Academy is a big mistake because you're distracting away from wisdom when you're gaining knowledge. Like every tradition says this, and yet Peterson's like, we're going to solve the meaning crisis with Peterson Academy, and I'm like, bro, like that, no, that's impossible. I want to read Sally. Lol, me understand first time hilarious. That's like Mark reading all the comments without mixing a word. True. I get just enough to ask Purple Unicorn. I get 12. It's about 12 days. Yes. Yeah, but like it really depends what you're trying to do. But if you're always trying to do something and you're never taking time to integrate the things you've done, then you don't learn. But you think you did because you read a book. And it's like, yeah, but reading a book isn't going to convey you learning ever. It's never going to happen. If you read a book and that causes you to integrate and then you take that integration, turn it into an action, yes, now you're learning. But you can't learn without action. It's not possible. Right. And so that's really the confusion, right? When you compress learning or flatten learning down to a propositional interaction where propositions are exchanged, as I talked about earlier in the monologue, you're completely lost. Like you're completely screwed.
Yeah, in some sense, yeah, what you're just talking about there also is kind of it's the tension between discernment. Kind of you got to have kind of both, and that kind of gives you that sense of buoyancy. If you over rely on one,
what's the other discernment and
so
what?
Talking about proper integration in discernment, because when you're integrating properly,
you need discernment to integrate because you have to integrate it correctly.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but it kind of is a both end because you need that discernment to inform what to integrate, and then through that it'll reinform your discernment better. Not that it's a feedback loop, but once you have some discernment, it helps you understand what not to.
No, I think
that chicken smells bad.
No, I think you want to switch the I think you want to switch the locus of attention on your discernment. Right? And so you're going from discerning what's coming in to discerning how to integrate it. So you're going from an external locus of attention to an internal locus of attention. Then it's not reciprocal. Right? But it does help your discernment. Like the process of aiming your discernment at your integration, because, and this is part of the argument, if you're cognitively overloaded, you will be possessed. Now, maybe it's a harmless possession and the magician will fool you with a card trick, right? With a force, right? But which is fine, like whatever, right? But the odds are you'll get fooled into thinking all Nazi salutes are fascist and all people who do fascist salutes are fascists, and you'll make crazy connections in the world that don't make any sense, and you'll be unable to defend them, right? Because Yeah, I went straight to Nazis wore clothes. Like, fascists wore clothes. They all wore clothes, right? But then when you tried to make a correct connection between all leftists became fascists and all fascists were former leftists, they wouldn't buy it. And all the proposition, like I said, like, it's not like they looked it up and came to another conclusion, because that was never not the case. Like, it is not an alternative explanation, right? So their ability to discern is broken. They integrated something without realizing it, and now it's possessed them. That's why it's not integrated, right? In other words, you're going to become influenced by external things, and there's two ways that happens: integration and possession. It's up to you, right? So you better be careful. I mean, that's the seeing the world filters and discernment, right? You need to discern things, and you need to place your discernment correctly. Otherwise, you get possessed. That's basically how it happens. Like, that's what possession is all about. And you can be possessed by a lot of things. Like, a different exemplification, you can get possessed by an idea or a set of ideas, right? Or you can get possessed by your own fantasy, by your own imagination,
or your own attempt at hybridization.
Right.
Something happens to your leg, you lose half your leg, and now most of your activities become about integrating this new metal leg that you've got, and that changes your, before you're someone that's outwardly focused on serving people, now you're about sports, integrating this new leg, and it becomes this whole thing of reordering or reprioritizing what you believe your purpose is. Yeah.
Sally claims that roofs are patriarchy, and that floors are female, only floors and above floors from here out.
Not sure what she's trying to say.
She's artistic. It's fine.
Okay. Well, so am I. So sometimes it helps. Sometimes it's like.
Yeah, someone told me I'm on the artistic spectrum.
You were what?
I was like, I'm on the artistic spectrum. I'm like, oh, thank you very much.
There you go.
You must have seen my drawings.
You're definitely on the artistic spectrum. Can confirm.
I think we. I need to go figure out some stuff now. I have much to do. 70 boxes to pack. 8 boxes of books.
Oh goodness. Yeah, well, let me know
when you're moving house as well. Ironically, so I know your pain.
Oh, you're moving, Andre?
Yeah, only a suburb away, but like we don't have like a deadline to get in the house. We're doing like a gradual shift over months, so JC's probably got like a lot more stress than I do.
Apparently, yes. I have the house from the 6th, so 2 weeks.
So
wow. I thought I was going to be there on March 6th. So timeline's just got shifted forward by a month. We'll see.
Oof.
Yeah.
And you have to be out or no?
I can stay, but it's just going to cost. Obviously, I'm going to start paying for this other place.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So it's just an expense problem.
Well, it's tax deductible, but who wants to spend money that they don't have to? Thank you, Sal.
No, don't spend money if you don't have to. Sally says good luck with the move. Probably to both of you, by the way.
Appreciate that. Discernment. It's a much needed thing to cultivate.
Oh, Sally claims her previous statements were like the whole Nazi salute. She overconnected to that point. Yes. She's giving you examples of overconnection.
Oh, right. Okay. I get it. I mean, roofs are patriarchy. It's kind of based, but anyway.
That is big. Well, that was the problem. Like, yeah, roofs are, and why is it the problem?
Even if you smash through the glass ceiling, the roof is the patriarchy, so you can't get through that.
That's right.
Pointless.
That's right. Yeah. Well, when you know what time you have, Jesse. Let me know, and we'll.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of notes too that I need to transcribe into that document as well. But then maybe they're for future things. So we're gonna get the thesis statement down. I want to keep thinking about my monsters thing too. I think it's close, but it might take some more.
All right. On that note, I think I'm going to discern that we're going to shut things down. I'm super tired anyway because it's cold. It disrupted my sleep. So, Andre, you get any closing statements for us?
No.
No. Okay. Jesse, closing statements.
Seek peace, pursue it, turn away from evil.
Yeah, that's my closing statement too. I agree with Jesse.
Hey, agreement is a closing statement.
Agreement is, in fact, a closing statement. I believe I'm going to double check. Yeah, I don't think I have anything going on next week, so we should be good to go. I don't know what the topic will be. There might be a progression from here or a continuation from this thread or something. But check out the rest of the videos on the channel because I talked about a lot of them tonight, and they're all sort of important concepts. And join in. We're tentatively going to have a conversation with Annie Crawford at some point. That would be fun. We'll see if we can make it happen. Good night, Dawn. Yeah, we're going to we're definitely going to get this Matrix thing banged out, hopefully in the next couple of months. hopefully.
This is start. It's at least 4 parts.
Yeah, we just got to get it started. Right. I think Sally's more information will not help. Say hi to your mom. Yeah, I think that's correct. So yeah, I don't know what the topic's going to be, but I know this is sort of a broad sweep about filters and discernment and seeing the world. And I kept going back and forth between your personal perspective of the outside world and your perspective of yourself. And obviously I did that on purpose. I don't know how well I succeeded, but it's really important. Right? It's really super important. And yeah, if you need to see an example of sort of the failure to come to conclusions that are sort of obvious, you can watch Paul Van de Clay's stream from earlier today. That exemplifies it quite nicely, actually. And I'm in the live stream comments sort of pointing all this out ahead of time. I saw it all coming. Not that that's new. Like I've tracked his trap early on, right, in the loop he was caught in, and tried to pull that out, but was never able to. But look, have a great week, everybody. Discern what you can, and if you're confused, talk to your friends. If you're really confused, you can come here, and maybe we can work it out for you. Who knows? But I appreciate Jesse and especially his interaction with Kirk. That was a great try. And I hope everybody has a wonderful week. And next week, I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll do it all again. And hopefully I won't be sick. And, hopefully it'll this will get bigger and we'll have more interaction and more new people. So take care, everyone. I will see you soon.